Chapter 988. Moon-worshipping cult began to go all out. It should be said that all of the bright demon lineage in West Chu were going all out. They were different from sects that like to play petty tricks like the Evil Pole sect. In the entire West Chu, all of the bright demon lineage sects respected moon-worshipping cult. Both sides would suffer and prosper together. As long as they helped Yi Xiaonan obtain the demon seed, would they need to worry about not getting any benefits? The sect master of the five poison sect, He Saihua, even took out all of the goo insects and poisonous creatures that she had refined. That power was also very shocking. With Dong Huang Tai going all out and the other bright demon lineage martial artists going all out, Yi Xiaonan's body shone with astral energy. With one hand, he mended the sky and cracked the earth. The endless water of the underground river turned into a waterspout that swept through the world. The power of the world was simply terrifying. With one move, Luo Mo and the others were forced back. Yi Xiaonan reached out and from the waterspout, a huge demon hand reached out and directly grabbed the demon seed. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed. The demon seed had fallen into Yi Xiaonan's hands. The hope of getting it back was almost zero. At this time, Chu Xiu glared at Shang Tianliang, meaning to look at him and then at you. Dong Huang Tai was willing to burn his blood essence for Yi Xiaonan, so couldn't you do a little more? Although Chu Xiu could find many people as loyal as Dong Huang Tai, they weren't strong enough. Those who were strong, like Shang Tianliang, wouldn't risk their lives for him. So Shang Tianliang glared back at Chu Xiu without hesitation. You found so many troublesome opponents for I, and now you want I to burn my blood essence to help you? Dream on. If Shang Tianliang didn't want to risk his life, then Chu Xiu would have to do it himself. From the beginning, Chu Xiu's goal wasn't the demon seed. Since Yi Xiaonan had already come, Chu Xiu knew his limits. He didn't want to fight with Yi Xiaonan for the demon seed. Therefore, he could only take a step back and fight for the stone saber. At this moment, the mental demon in Chu Xiu's mind suddenly said, "The weapon spirit on the saber you snatched earlier is very violent. If you attach me to the saber, I can temporarily suppress the weapon spirit for a period of time." This time, Chu Xiu was stunned by the inner demon's words. Just now, Chu Xiu had indeed relied on this inner demon to deal with Kuang Shiyue so quickly. But now, this inner demon had taken the initiative to help him. What was it planning? In Chu Xiu's mind, the inner demon took the form of a human. It shrugged and said, "I'm trapped now. It's going to be very difficult for me to escape. According to the way you humans do things, especially a greedy human like you will definitely use all kinds of methods to study me and bring out my greatest value. Instead of that, I might as well show my value now and save myself from suffering. This way, everyone will be better, right?" Chu Xiu looked at the inner demon in surprise. This thing was indeed the incarnation of the darkest existence in the human heart. Its control over the human heart had reached a very deep level. It was right. If Chu Xiu couldn't figure out its use, then Chu Xiu would throw this inner demon to Master Yuanji or Feng Buping to study. As for whether it would eventually die or survive, it was not Chu Xiu's business. However, since it had said so, Chu Xiu directly asked, "How long can you suppress the evil moon saber's weapon spirit?" The inner demon said, "My power mainly lies in breaking through the human heart's defense and building an illusion. To deal with the weapon spirit, I can only use the simplest power to suppress it. I estimate that I can only do it for a quarter of an hour." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "A quarter of an hour is enough." As soon as his voice fell, in an instant, Chu Xiu's body bloomed with a dazzling red blood qi. It even stimulated the powerful demonic energy in the primitive demon's cave. In an instant, the sky changed color. The blood demon transformation technique was displayed. In an instant, Chu Xiu's power skyrocketed. It had even risen to the level of a heaven and earth mystic enlightenment powerhouse. Lu Jianghe's brows suddenly jumped. Again. It had to be known that he was the one who created the blood demon transformation technique. In the end, he didn't even use it once. It was all used by Chu Xiu. It could even be said that as the creator of this secret technique, his understanding of it might not be as good as Chu Xiu's. Lu Jianghe couldn't help but curl his lips. With the sect master's indestructible demon pill, he could be willful. If he had the indestructible demon pill, then he would have dared to bare his teeth at that old Taoist Ning Xuanji. The moment Chu Xiu's strength erupted, the others had already noticed it. Su Ci, who was the closest to Chu Xiu, pressed his palms together. Buddha light filled the skies and a resplendent Buddha kingdom fell down, illuminating the primitive demon's cave with a holy and glorious feeling. Moreover, it wasn't just Su Ci. Countless righteous path martial artists also came forward to intercept Chu Xiao. Only 3 things were bred from the primitive demon's cave's dragon vein. The strange stone was taken away by Zhong Shenxiao and the demon seed ultimately fell into Yi Xiaonan's hands. And finally, if the strange blade-like stone was obtained by Chu Xiao, then the righteous path martial artists would have come to primitive demon's cave in vain. Facing so many powerhouses attacking together, it was unknown when Chu Xiao had replaced the peerless heavenly blade with the evil moon blade. The powerful and crazy aura of the blade had just begun to attack Chu Xiao when it was completely suppressed by his heart demons. In an instant, the evil moon blade in Chu Xiao's hand shined with a bright and evil blood-red moonlight. For a quarter of an hour, Chu Xiao could completely control this ominous weapon from ancient times. Chu Xiao closed his eyes, and the saber attack that Dugu Weiwa had unleashed in the blood-red lotus's illusory realm appeared before his eyes once again. This time, Chu Xiao seemed to understand some of the saber intent within it. In truth, there was only one word in that saber intent: break. The word break was like a blade that could cut through stone, destroying everything in its path. There was no existence that could stop this break saber. This could be called an extreme saber intent. In truth, it was the most simple truth of the saber path. The great Tao was simple. When Dugu Weiwei slashed out with this saber, he had already returned to his true self. As he slashed out with the word break, there was no existence that could stop him. Now, Chu Xiao had exchanged the blood demon heaven transformation art for extreme strength and the ancient ominous weapon, evil moon, for extreme sharpness. As he slashed out with this break saber once more, his strength and even his state of mind were 30% similar to Dugu Weiwei's. Although it was only 30%, it was enough. As the blade slashed down, everything seemed to be sliced into 2 halves in an instant. Time was cut apart, space was cut apart, and the universe was cut in half. Time seemed to come to a standstill for a moment. In the next moment, the tens of thousands of Buddhist kingdoms that Su Ci had created completely collapsed. As for the other righteous path martial artists that stood in front of Chu Xiao, the stronger ones had their offensive completely cut off by Chu Xiao. As for the weaker ones, the saber intent entered their bodies, causing them to vomit blood and fly away. As for the weaker ones, they were directly cut in half by this saber. The strangest thing was that no matter what posture they took, they were all cut in half from the point between their eyebrows. The power of this saber could no longer be described with words. And Chu Xiao took advantage of the power of this saber. Ignoring his burning blood vitality, his figure turned into a blood-red light as he directly arrived in front of the dragon vein and took the stone saber into his robes. All the righteous path martial artists present revealed a trace of unwillingness. They had come here to prevent the demonic path martial artists from obtaining the supreme treasures of the primitive demon cave. But now, they had failed to obtain any of the 3 treasures they had set out to obtain, and 2 of them were in the hands of the demonic path martial artists. To them, this was a complete and utter defeat. However, the demon seed had fallen into Yi Xiaonan's hands. They didn't dare to snatch it, nor could they. But this wasn't necessarily the case for Chu Xiao. Although the power of his saber just now was astonishing, no one present was mediocre. They could almost instantly guess that Chu Xiao must have paid a certain price to use such a powerful saber strike. It wouldn't last for long. But before they could attack, the entire primitive demon cave began to shake. Cracks began to appear in the underground river above everyone's heads. Some sort of law began to disappear, and in an instant, the water of the underground river began to flow downwards. In an instant, everyone found themselves in a monstrous flood. This time, the water of the underground river was not broken by everyone, and some of the laws of heaven and earth were losing effect. This should be related to the damage to the dragon vein. Last time, even though Dugu Weiwa had also come here and obtained the things inside, he did not destroy the dragon vein. Thus, it took 500 years for the demon seed and other things to be born. This time, Yi Xiaonan was ruthless. His saber had severely damaged the foundation of the dragon vein, and then Chu Xiao took the stone saber. His actions were not gentle, so in this way, the dragon vein completely collapsed, and it also caused the entire primitive demon cave to change color. No matter how strong a human was, it couldn't be stronger than the power of heaven and earth. After the primitive demon cave began to collapse, Everyone had no intention of snatching anything else. They all fled frantically to the exit. Chu Xiao also retracted the blood demon transformation technique and shouted, "Retreat!" Everyone followed Chu Xiao and fled to the exit. Fortunately, everyone present was relatively strong, especially on Chu Xiao's side. There wasn't even a real pellet state, so they escaped smoothly. After escaping outside, Chu Xiao suddenly gasped, and his face was slightly pale. The power of the blood demon transformation technique was amazing, but it also consumed a lot of vitality. Even if Chu Xiao only maintained one saber just now, he had consumed a lot of vitality at this time. If he didn't have the eternal demon pill, he might even be seriously injured on the spot. I don't know what Lu Jianghe, that timid guy, was thinking at the beginning. He almost never fought with others, but he actually developed this kind of means that he would only use when fighting to the end. At this time, Lu Jianghe suddenly looked at Chu Xiao as if he felt that Chu Xiao was slandering him, but he was glared back by Chu Xiao. Chapter 989. The Righteous Path and Fiend Path cultivators fled the primitive demon cave in a panic. But this time, they no longer had the strength to cause trouble for Chu Xiao. Some of the Righteous Path cultivators who were too slow were buried in the primitive demon cave. The might of heaven and earth was not something a human could resist. At this time, they discovered that another group of people had escaped as well. They were Si Wuya, Yuan Guang, and the others who were trapped in the deep pool. The deep pool was a branch of the demonic dragon vein. When Yi Xiaonan injured the dragon vein automatically drew power from those branches. Hence, the power of the deep pool had weakened. When the dragon vein collapsed, the power that bound them disappeared, and they regained their freedom. The Righteous Path cultivators were overjoyed to see their patriarch from 800 years ago. However, the Fiend Path cultivators' atmosphere was not so harmonious. Si Wuya and the others looked at Chu Xiao with unfriendly eyes. They clearly had a chance to leave, but this Fiend Path cultivator refused to let them go. He even spoke rudely. If it weren't for the accident in the primitive demon cave, they might not have been able to leave in this lifetime. However, Si Wuya and the others did not say anything. When they were trapped in the primitive demon cave, their minds were a little muddled. Now that they came out of the primitive demon cave and saw the strength of Chu Xiao's side, especially Shang Tianliang, a heaven and earth illuminating realm expert, they instantly sobered up. They could not afford to offend this Fiend Path cultivator for now. Hence, they could only give up and not provoke Chu Xiao. At this time, the entrance to the primitive demon cave began to tremble. It was clearly about to close. However, just as the primitive demon cave was about to close, a white-robed figure walked out unhurriedly. It was Zhong Shenxiu. Everyone present was stunned for a moment. Didn't this person leave long ago? Why did he come out? Zhong Shenxiu looked around and walked up to Feng Qishao, who was closest to him. He asked, "Excuse me, where is the east? I want to return to the East Sea." Seventh young Master Feng was confused by the question. He subconsciously pointed to the east and said, "There." Zhong Shenxiu nodded and said, "Many thanks." He subconsciously raised his hand, but after looking at Feng Qishao, he put it down again and turned to leave. In just a few steps, he had already disappeared from everyone's sight and perception. Only after Zhong Shenxiu left did everyone react. This number one person of the present age. Could he be someone who had no sense of direction? Before this, they were still wondering why Zhong Shenxiu was the last one to come out even though he had left long ago. It seemed that he had gotten lost in the primitive demon cave and had only found the exit at the end. At that moment, in the main hall of the Gate of Heaven, Jun Wuxian walked out from the space portal with Lin Songlong in his hand. The elder from the Heaven Gate had been waiting inside. When he saw Jun Wuxian bringing Lin Songlong back, he went up to them and wanted to say something. However, Jun Wuxian waved his hand and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Lin Songlong jumped in fright and hurriedly said, "Sect Master Yu." Before he could finish speaking, Jun Wuxian sent him flying with a slap. He crashed into the main hall and vomited blood. Jun Wuxian wiped away the blood and said lightly, "I met Zhong Shenxiu and was no match for his great boundless sword Qi and void spirit finger. I will be in seclusion during this period of time. There is news of the birth of the Heaven Pass, so we must treat it seriously." The elder's eyes flashed with horror. It's Zhong Shenxiu again. What is his background? The Heaven Gate was very mysterious, But Zhong Shenxiu of the Great Boundless Heaven was even more mysterious. He was a person without a past. Jun Wuxian turned his gaze to Lin Songlong and said expressionlessly, "Do you know why I hit you?" Lin Songlong lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I know." Kuang Shiyue was a madman. But he was not. He had failed to stop Kuang Shiyue and ruin things, so he naturally deserved to be hit. This time, Kuang Shiyue was dead. If Kuang Shiyue was still alive, he would have been better off dead. So he had only suffered 2 slaps, which was already considered very light. Your authority to leave the heaven gate has been revoked. Wait for another reincarnation. The next time a heaven pass appears, replace it with someone else. Lin Songlong revealed a bitter smile and said, "Yes, sect master." In truth, the unluckiest person this time was Lin Songlong. He had been able to maintain a clear mind, but he had been ruined by Kuang Shiyue. But Kuang Shiyue was already dead. How could he bicker with a dead person? At this time, in the northern lands, the primitive devil cave had been destroyed, and the righteous and demonic factions had dispersed. This time, the righteous faction had undoubtedly suffered the most. Because not only had they failed to achieve their goal, but they had also suffered heavy losses. The demon seed had been obtained by Yi Xiaonan. Yi Xiaonan, who was already powerful, would definitely advance further this time. Although he did not know what the stone saber that Chu Xiu had obtained was, since it was born from the demon dragon's dragon vein, it was clearly not an ordinary object. And in this battle, many people had died at the hands of Yi Xiaonan and Chu Xiu. Of course, most of them died at the moment when the power of the primitive devil cave erupted. The power of heaven and earth was the most terrifying. After returning to the subduing martial hall, Chu Xiu was also reviewing his actions in the primitive devil cave and reflecting on it. This time in the primitive devil cave, his mistake was indeed a bit big, and he had almost put himself in danger. It could even be said that if Zhong Shenxiu had not arrived in time, he would have been in danger when facing Jun Wuxian. It was just that Chu Xiu's brain circuit was a bit different from ordinary people. Ordinary people who encountered such a thing would definitely warn themselves that next time they could not be so impulsive, and that they should be patient and steady. But after Chu Xiu reflected on it, he did not think that killing Kuang Shiyue was wrong. In fact, if he was given another chance, he would kill Kuang Shiyue again. Chu Xiu believed that his main mistake was underestimating the enemy. He had always regarded Elysium as a normal martial arts sect, but now it seemed that Elysium was not the same as other martial arts sections. So the next time they fought, Chu Xiu had to first think of a way to escape or deal with it. Originally, Chu Xiu had planned to go into seclusion. He had fought so many people in the primitive devil cave, and he had also seen many heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouses fight with his own eyes. There were even legendary existences like Jun Wuxian and Zhong Shenxiu. He had also comprehended the Great Compassion poem and Dugu Weiwei's break, Formula Saber Intent. He would definitely need to go into seclusion for a period of time to digest it. However, there was still one thing that Chu Xiu had to figure out, and that was how to turn the stone saber he had seized into an existence like the demonic saber Ting Chunyu. So Chu Xiu directly called Lu Jianghe. Taking out the stone saber, Chu Xiu asked, "How should this thing be used? I studied it for a long time, but I didn't find anything strange in it. I wanted to cut it open, but it turned out that this thing was as hard as a divine weapon." Lu Jianghe said, "Didn't I say that this thing needs to be tempered with the rootless sacred flame, and the outer stone skin needs to be refined to become a real demonic saber?" Chu Xiu frowned and said, "But the rootless sacred flame is sealed at the peak of the Kunlun devil cult and sealed by the Subodhi Zen monastery with the 6 paths of Buddha's rebirth formation. Once I climb the Kunlun mountain, I will face the siege of the entire righteous martial arts world. Not to mention me, even Yi Xiaonan can't stop them." The Kunlun devil cult could be said to be a taboo in the current martial arts world. Yi Xiaonan's strength was now strong enough. He was the #1 demon in the world, and he had so many helpers from the bright demon lineage. But even with this strength, Yi Xiaonan didn't dare to enter West Kunlun. No one in the martial arts world wanted to see another Kunlun devil cult. At that time, even the old Celestial Master, who had been retiring in the Celestial Master Mansion, would go all out. No one knew what terrifying trump card Wind Cloud Sword Tomb would dig out from the grave. It could be said that if someone wanted to go to West Kunlun, it meant that he would be the enemy of the entire martial arts world. Holding the stone saber, Chu Xiu touched his chin and said, "According to what you said, This stone saber is actually just a saber embryo. It needs to be refined before it can be used. I have a good relationship with the refining master Mo Yezi. I'll ask him to see if he can refine it. Lu Jiang he shook his head and said, You don't even need to think about it. With the strength of our sect in the past, would there be a shortage of refining masters? When the sect leader first got listened to Spring Rain, he asked this group of refining masters to think of a way, but none of them could refine it. This stone saber was formed from the devil dragon's dragon vein with boundless devil chi. It is a natural object. And the rootless sacred fire at the peak of West Kunlun was also born from the gathering of the dragon vein. Only a natural object can refine a natural object. Otherwise, it would be useless for anyone else. Chu Xiao frowned. Doesn't this mean that this thing is useless for the time being? Lu Jiang he shrugged and said, It seems so now. Chu Xiao looked at Lu Jiang he with some hostility. He had even used the blood demon transformation technique to get this thing and risked his life. In the end, he was told that he couldn't use it for the time being? Feeling Chu Xiao's gaze, Lu Jiang he hurriedly said, Don't worry. Haste makes waste. I'm very optimistic about you. It's not impossible for you to take over West Kunlun in the future. Anyway, this magic saber will be yours sooner or later. It's better to grab it first than to let it fall into the hands of others, isn't it? Chu Xiao waved his hand and asked Lu Jiang he to get out first. This guy had never been reliable, but the last sentence he said really made Chu Xiao a little tempted. It was not impossible for him to take over West Kunlun. It should be said that whether Chu Xiao wanted to take over West Kunlun or not, he would be forced to take this road in the end. The righteous and the demonic were already like fire and water. When the demonic rose, the righteous disappeared. At the moment, Yi Xiaonan was bearing the pressure of most of the righteous. When Chu Xiao also reached Yi Xiaonan's position one day, the pressure would be transferred to him. When Chu Xiao surpassed Yi Xiaonan, the entire righteous Wulin would not sit back and watch Chu Xiao rise. At that time, apart from taking over West Kunlun and completely raising the banner of the devil cult, did Chu Xiao have any other choice? Chapter 990. After sending the others away, Chu Xiao also entered a state of retreat. He needed to digest some of the insights he gained from the fierce battle in the primitive demon cave. The consumption of using the blood demon transformation technique also needed to be repaired. Although Chu Xiao only used it for a short time, and he still had the eternal demon pill, so he didn't suffer too many injuries, there were still some aftereffects. During the time when Chu Xiao was in retreat, the entire underworld was not calm, and undercurrents were surging. There were two fundamental reasons. One was Yi Xiaonan, and the other was the righteous and demonic martial artists who were released from the deep pool. Yi Xiaonan got the demon seed, which had already made the righteous martial artists very afraid. No one knew to what extent Yi Xiaonan's strength would skyrocket after refining this legendary treasure. Therefore, most of the righteous sects were already extremely afraid of the moon-worshipping cult. Some people even wanted to explore the details of the moon-worshipping cult and attack the moon-worshipping cult when Yi Xiaonan was in retreat. The martial artists who were released from the deep pool also had a great impact on the situation of the entire underworld, especially the Tao lineage. The Buddhists were still fine. Yuan Guang from the Great Light Temple and an ascetic monk from the Sabodhi Monastery were trapped. For the Sabodhi Monastery, one more ascetic monk of the true fire spirit refinement realm was just a little more strength. It was not a big deal. As for Yuan Guang, 800 years ago, he once served as the head of the Vajra Monastery, but he later gave up his position. He was able to suppress the side effects of the furious Vajra Heart Sutra, and his personality was also very peaceful. Knowing that 800 years had passed, he naturally had no intention of fighting for power. He was just ready to use his last time to do his last bit of strength for the sect. Someone was also trapped in Dragon Tiger Mountain, but it was just a real pellet state martial artist. The strength of Dragon Tiger Mountain Taoist Master Mansion 800 years ago could be said to be really not too strong. Only the current Taoist master could hold up the facade. Therefore, even in a place like the primitive demon cave, only a real pellet state martial artist could enter. However, for the pure Yang Dao sect and the true martial sect, the people who walked out of the two sects had powerful backgrounds. At this time, in the main hall of Chunyang Dao sect, a middle-aged Taoist priest in a white Taoist robe was reading through all the events that had happened in Chunyang Dao sect over the years. His face was dignified and cold, and anyone who saw him would feel their heart tremble. This middle-aged Taoist was the leader of the 6 Taoist masters of the Heavenly Dipper Hall 800 years ago, Yun Mingzi. In terms of actual age, excluding the 800 years that he had been trapped here, Yun Mingzi was younger than everyone else here. In fact, he was only slightly older than Shi Yunzi, not even 100 years old. The leader of this generation's 6 spiritual masters was Chang Yunzi, who had died at the hands of Chu Xiao. He was already close to 300 years old, a standard old man. As a result, Yun Mingzi was able to serve as the leader of the 6 spiritual masters of Heavenly Dipper Hall in his prime. One could imagine how terrifying his talent and strength were. And this was also because he was accidentally trapped in the primitive demon cave. Otherwise, maybe the next generation or the generation after the Chunyang Dao sect's master would be him. At this time, Yun Mingzi looked at the changes in strength of the Chunyang Dao sect in the past 800 years, and his expression became more and more ugly. Trash. All a bunch of trash. The foundation left behind by the ancestors had been ruined to such a state in just 800 years? It's fine that the true martial arts sect has Ning Xuanji. My Dao sect has many heroes, and it's not surprising that there are powerhouses in any lineage. However, my Chunyang Dao sect was humiliated by Chu Xiao, that demonic cultivator. Even the leader of this generation's 6 spiritual masters died in his hands, and you all turned a blind eye to it. What is this? This is a disgrace. In the past, Yun Mingzi's era, the Chunyang Dao sect was still in its heyday. He, the leader of the 6 spiritual masters, was already so young. One could imagine how many older generation martial artists there were in the entire Chunyang Dao sect. It was not like now. Regardless of age, as long as one could reach the real pellet state, they were already the high-level combat power of the Chunyang Dao sect. At this time, listening to Yun Mingzi's angry scolding, Shi Yunzi's expression was very ugly. If their Chunyang Dao sect had the strength of 800 years ago, they would have cut Chu Xiao into pieces long ago. Would they still need to be looked down upon by you here? However, although he cursed in his heart, he didn't say it out loud because Yun Mingzi's identity was a little special. People like the Great Light Temple's Yuan Guang were actually very smart. 800 years had passed, and everything had changed. However, in these 800 years of stagnation, he didn't feel that his seniority had increased. So after returning to the Great Light Temple, he still did what he should do. However, Yun Mingzi was different. He happened to be Ling Yunzi's grandmaster. That's right, not the grandmaster of the entire sect, but the grandmaster of his lineage, a direct descendant. Therefore, this was a pain in the ass. If Yun Mingzi was just an ancestor of other Chunyang Dao sect, no matter how bad his temper was, he wouldn't dare to be so arrogant in front of Ling Yunzi, the sect master of Chunyang Dao sect, a powerhouse at the heaven and earth enlightenment state. However, he was the direct ancestor of Ling Yunzi's lineage. On the other hand, even if Ling Yunzi was the sect master, even if he was a powerhouse at the heaven and earth enlightenment state, he couldn't be disrespectful to him. Therefore, Ling Yunzi could only cough and say, "Grandmaster, no matter how weak our Chunyang Dao sect is, it won't be to this extent." After Chang Yunzi died, of course, we also took action. However, Chu Xiao has too many trump cards, so it's not that easy to deal with him. If we force our way through, it'll only cause both sides to suffer. Yun Mingzi sighed and said, 800 years have passed, and the world has changed. I didn't expect our Chunyang Dao sect to fall to such a state. We're being bullied by the demonic path. You should know that 800 years ago, those people from the Devil Dao would flee upon seeing the pure Yang astral energy of our pure Yang Dao sect. Shi Yunzi, who was at the side, pursed his lips. It should be said that the decline of the Chunyang Dao sect was unstoppable. This was because 500 years ago, a Dugu Weiwei had appeared. 800 years ago, you could make the demonic path flee, but after another 300 years, you can make Dugu Weiwei flee? Based on the Chunyang Dao sect's character, many people had died in the hands of the Kunlun devil cult 500 years ago. Therefore, it's good enough that the Chunyang Dao sect is still around. Why do they have so many demands? Yun Mingzi waved his hand and said, "Let's not care about the past for now. However, sect master, our Chunyang Dao sect can't continue to be so decadent now." Ling Yunzi nodded and said, "I know that. Therefore, during this period of time, our Chunyang Dao sect has been recruiting disciples from all over the world to rebuild our strength. Previously, although we failed to establish a branch in northern Yen, We succeeded in recruiting many talented disciples. After training them successfully, they'll be of great use. Yun Mengzi waved his hand and said, "How long will it take for the younger generation to grow? We're not so old that we can't fight. 10 years is too long, and 100 years is too long. Now, we can only seize the day." The power of our Chunyang Dao sect has always relied on the pure Yang sword in our hands to kill demons. When the pure Yang sword shines on the pugilistic world, will we still have to worry about not having disciples? That diabolism thief named Chu Xiao has killed so many people of our Chunyang Dao sect. How can we let go of this humiliation? This time, we'll start with him. Ling Yunzi's expression changed and he quickly said, "Grandmaster, no. Chu Xiao is not a simple diabolism junior. In fact, the entire Hidden Devil clan respects him. It can be said that he's the leader of the Hidden Devil clan. Moreover, he has people in the heaven and earth mystic realm under him. Although I have the confidence to win, the others are no match for Chu Xiao. Especially now that he's entrenched in the Northern Yan land. The new Northern Yan Emperor, Xiang Li, was personally supported to the throne by him. He even admitted that in the Northern Yan land, the Xiang royal family is in charge of the imperial court, and he, Chu Xiao, is in charge of the pugilistic world. Although Chu Xiao is only a junior in terms of age, in terms of power, he's already a veritable diabolism giant. He's second only to the moon-worshipping cult's Yi Shaonan. We can't touch him easily." Yun Mengzi snorted and said, "Great devil? In the past, countless great devils died under the sword of our Chunyang Dao sect. If we want to touch them, we should touch the great devils. If we touch those little devils, we'll lose face." Seeing that Ling Yunzi was about to say something, Yun Mengzi waved his hand and said, "Sect leader, do you think that I'm a stubborn old man who only knows how to fight and kill, and is impulsive and brainless?" Shi Yunzi continued to twitch his mouth. "Aren't you?" Ling Yunzi said, "Grandmaster, that's not what I mean." Yun Mengzi snorted and said, "Sect leader, don't forget that I was also the leader of the 6 Temple Guardian Immortals in the past. I'm also qualified to join hands with the current sect leader to discuss some of the important matters of the Chunyang Dao sect. In the past, many important matters were facilitated by us. The methods of the diabolism are ruthless and cruel. To deal with the diabolism, you have to be more ruthless, more cruel, and more unscrupulous than them. Previously, when you besieged Chu Xiao, you were forced to retreat by Chu Xiao. Do you know why? Because you're not as ruthless as him. Don't worry, this time, I won't let the Chunyang Dao sect take the risk alone. The old man from the true martial arts cult has also been released. His temper is even more fiery than mine. Although I don't like that old man, he's still capable. Later, I'll go to the true martial arts cult to discuss with him and make a big move. In today's underworld, the diabolism has disappeared and the diabolism has risen. However, in this underworld, evil will never prevail over good. The previous actions of yours are simply child's play. It's fine if you don't take action, but once you take action, you'll crush all the diabolism demons with a thunderous force. Don't worry, sect leader. When I'm back, I'll give you an explanation." After that, Yun Mengzi walked out of the door directly, not even giving Ling Yunzi a chance to speak. Moreover, looking at the warriors of the Chunyang Dao sect in the main hall, they were all excited by Yun Mengzi's words. The Chunyang Dao sect had been used to being domineering since the beginning. Ling Yunzi had always wanted to reverse the situation, but he had never seen any results. In the end, when Yun Mengzi returned, his temper was very much to the taste of the people of the Chunyang Dao sect. Ling Yunzi sighed. He didn't know whether the outcome this time was good or bad. Chapter 991. Yun Mengzi was Ling Yunzi's grandmaster. This identity was already very awkward. However, the identity of the one from the real martial sect was even more awkward. The one who was released from the real martial sect was the sect leader of the real martial sect 800 years ago, Sage Qing Chen, Han Jusi. In the 3 great Dao sects, the real martial sect had never been very strong until Ning Xuanji appeared 500 years ago. Therefore, when the primitive devil cave opened 800 years ago, he, the sect leader, personally went there. As a result, he was trapped there, causing the real martial sect to collapse. Perhaps it was because heroes could only be born in adversity. During the 300 years when Han Jusi disappeared, it was the most difficult period for the real martial sect. It was also under this pressure that Ning Xuanji appeared. However, now that Han Jusi had returned, Lu Chonglu was a little embarrassed. A sect could not have two sect leaders, right? Fortunately, although Han Jusi was a little hot-tempered, he was not the kind of person who only knew how to fight for fame and fortune. He did not care much about power and status. Therefore, before Lu Chonglu said anything, he took the initiative to give up his position. Lu Chonglu was still the sect leader. He could be an elder in the real martial sect and do his best for the sect. When Yun Mengzi came to him and told him about his plan, Han Jusi's eyes lit up and he immediately said, "Of course, no problem. It's unbelievable that the righteous sects, especially the Dao sects, have been reduced to such a state, except for Dragon Tiger Mountain. After 800 years, we have finally reappeared in Jianghu. Maybe this is God's will, seeing that there is no one in the real martial sect and pure Yang sect. Let us out." Lu Chonglu was also at the side at this time. When he heard this, he quickly stopped him and said, "Ancestor and Taoist priest, the war between the righteous and demonic sects has just ended. The relationship between the righteous and demonic sects is very tense now. Everything needs to be done in the long run." Han Jusi waved his hand and said with some dissatisfaction, "Sect leader, you are good at everything, but your temperament is a little too soft. Since our true martial arts sect has such a powerful person like Ning Xuanji, even if he disappeared together with Duga Weiwa, our true martial arts sect shouldn't be as powerful as it is now. Sometimes, it's natural to be more decisive when doing things. If every matter is discussed in the long run, the more problems there are, and in the end, there will be no movement." Yun Mengzi said straightforwardly, "Headmaster Lu, you don't have to worry. We have a sense of propriety when we do things. If we don't have a certain degree of certainty, then it wouldn't be called resolute, but reckless." If it was in the past, Lu Chonglu would definitely not agree to such a thing. This was his character, and it was the same for the future development of the true martial arts sect. There was no harm in being careful. Since the true martial arts sect could produce a Ning Xuanji, they could naturally produce a second Ning Xuanji. As long as they could exist in the underworld, there would be countless opportunities. However, Han Jusi was also a sect leader in the past, so his thinking was different from his. Previously, Han Jusi had already taken a step back. Lu Chonglu also didn't want to see his fellow disciples kill each other. Therefore he could only ask, "Does Taoist Master Yun Mengzi have a general plan?" Yun Mengzi's eyes narrowed as he said, "Of course there is a plan, and this plan not only includes us, but also includes the entire Eastern Qi, the entire righteous martial arts world. A thunderous strike is a fatal blow. If we don't make a big move, it will be meaningless if we still fight on a small scale like before." When Lu Chonglu heard about the general plan that Yun Mengzi and Han Jusi had discussed, his eyes widened. He didn't know if Yun Mengzi and the others had been imprisoned in the primitive devil cave for too long, and they were too stifled. Once they came out, they wanted to do something big. They felt that it was not enough to just have the Dao lineage or the righteous lineage take action. They also wanted to pull Eastern Qi to take action together. From a war between the righteous and demonic sects, it would become a world of chaos. Now that Chu Xiu had personally supported Northern Yen Xiongli to take the throne, the Northern Yen had already become a country protected by the demonic sections. Moreover, within the entire Northern Yen, there were very few Dao and Buddhist sections. There were almost no famous Dao sections. The Great Light Temple was in the Northern Yen, but it was in the extreme north, so it had almost no impact on the Northern Yen. In addition, the Northern Yen Emperor Xiongli had personally announced Chu Xiu as the supreme of the Northern Yen martial arts world. The entire Northern Yen had become a den of demons. At this time, if they didn't mobilize the Eastern Qi Imperial Court to take action, it would be a waste of the situation. Yun Mengzi, Han Jusi, and the other Dao experts from 800 years ago, their way of doing things and vision were very different from the current martial artists. 800 years ago, the pugilistic world had yet to experience the Kunlun devil cult's unification of the pugilistic world. Therefore, the sects in the pugilistic world were flourishing. The righteous and the demonic sects attacked each other, and there were even some who became friends with each other. Moreover, the world 800 years ago was not like it was now. There were many small and large countries, and there were at least a dozen of them in total. At that time, there was no West Chu, and the Northern Yen was only a small barbarian country in the north. Only Eastern Qi was slightly famous. However, the Eastern Qi emperor at that time did not have the surname Lu, but Jiang. Therefore, the sect masters of the martial arts world in that era, not to mention their strength, were much more generous in their way of doing things. They would easily ally with dozens of forces and set off waves of chaos. There was even a sect that controlled a small country. At that time, the distinction between the pugilistic world and the imperial court was not that clear. There was me in you and you in me. It was very normal for them to join forces and attack each other. Based on Lu Chongliu's character, he originally did not want to agree to this kind of thing. But with Han Juxi's insistence, he had no other choice. He could see that Han Juxi was also thinking for the sake of the true martial arts sect. Moreover, he had taken the initiative to concede to him. Moreover, Lu Chonglu did not want to get into an argument with Han Juxi over this matter. Therefore, he had no choice but to agree. Together, they went to the great Liang city of Eastern Qi. Although the true martial arts sect was not as powerful as it was when Ning Xuanji was still around, in the Eastern Qi imperial court, the true martial arts sect was the most popular one. It was even stronger than the White Tiger Hall that had surrendered to the Eastern Qi imperial court. The true martial arts sect was the national religion of Eastern Qi. Any sacrificial ceremony in the Eastern Qi imperial court had to be carried out by the true martial arts sect. Even the imperial astronomer of the Eastern Qi imperial court was a disciple of the true martial arts sect. Therefore, when Lu Chonglu came forward, Lu Haochong even came forward to greet him personally. Although in the eyes of the late Xianglong, Lu Haochong was a mediocre good-for-nothing, it had to be said that Lu Haochong had lived a much better life than Xianglong. He was a little older than Xianglong, but Xianglong had died of illness. Yet, he could still hold his concubines and have fun every night. The number of princes was already close to 3 digits. Seeing Lu Chonglu coming, Lu Haochong laughed and greeted him. "Sage Lu, you haven't come to Great Liang City for a long time. This time, I have to entertain you well." And the 3 yuan internal cultivation scripture that Sage Lu passed on to me last time is very useful. You can practice for a quarter of an hour in the day, and you can persist for 2 hours at night. It's quite effective. Lu Chongliu's face couldn't help but turn black when he heard this. He had given Lu Haochong the most orthodox Taoist basic internal strength to strengthen the body. It was used to help Lu Haochong prolong his life. In the end, he used it as an aphrodisiac? Yun Mengzi and Han Juxi didn't think so much. 800 years ago, the sects had a very close relationship with the imperial court. Not to mention teaching this kind of cultivation method to the emperor, there were many who directly refined aphrodisiac for the emperor. Who are these 2? Lu Chonglu introduced. This is Sage Yun Mengzi of the Chunyang Dao sect. This is Sage Qing Chen of the True Martial sect. Lu Chonglu didn't say in detail about the things that happened in the primitive Devil's Cave and what happened 800 years ago. Of course, there was no need to say it. It was enough for Lu Haochong to know their identity. After entering the hall, Lu Chonglu didn't keep Lu Haochong in suspense. He directly told everything to Lu Haochong. After listening, Lu Haochong fell into silence. He didn't directly agree. It was true that Lu Haochong was mediocre, but he was only mediocre when compared to Xianglong. Moreover, mediocre didn't mean that he was an incapable ruler. Lu Haochong had sat on the throne for several decades, and he still sat so stably. An incapable ruler wouldn't be able to do this. He might not be as capable or as decisive as Xianglong, but his only advantage was his cautiousness. He wouldn't make a decision on such a major matter, even if the other party was the orthodoxy's true martial sect. Therefore, Lu Haochong directly evaded, "We still can't make a decision on such a major matter. Everyone, please wait a moment. We will gather the officials to discuss this matter, and then we will give you an answer." At this moment, Yun Mengzi suddenly said, "Can your majesty listen to a few words from this humble Taoist?" "Please, sage," Yun Mengzi said in a low voice. "This matter doesn't just concern the conflict between the righteous and demonic branches of the Jianghu. In fact, it also involves the imperial court. Although Chu Xiao is still considered a junior, in reality, he has already taken control of the Yinma branch. In the demonic path, he is second only to Yi Xiaonan. The Northern Yan Emperor was supported by Chu Xiao to ascend to the throne. The Northern Yan Emperor even said that in the Northern Yan Jianghu, Chu Xiao is the supreme ruler. The relationship between the two sides is already so close. Your Majesty should be able to see what this means. Therefore, if the demonic path rises and the Tao falls, it won't just be the demonic path that rises, but also the Northern Yen Imperial Court. If the Tao falls, it won't just be the righteous path that falls, but the Eastern Qi Imperial Court as well. Your Majesty, we need to plan ahead for this matter. We are not only here for ourselves, but also for the Central Plains warriors. Now that Eastern Qi has taken control of the Central Plains, once the demonic path controls the Northern Yen, the entire Central Plains will be plunged into misery and suffering. Hearing Yun Mingzi's words, Lu Haochong was a little flustered. It was true that he was a mediocre emperor, but he was not a fatuous one. It was impossible for him to unify the world in his generation. He knew very well that he could not do such a thing. But even if he could not unify the world, the Eastern Qi's empire could not be lost in his hands, could he? Otherwise, how would he face his ancestors? Chapter 992. Lu Haochong was frightened by Yun Mengzi's words. In fact, Yun Mengzi was not trying to scare Lu Haochong, but 800 years ago, this kind of trick was very common. Perhaps Chu Xiu himself did not know that he used the people of Jianghu to support the crown prince in exchange for his own interests, which was actually very old-fashioned. After gathering all the officials, Lu Haochong told all these things to the officials of Eastern Qi. Finally, the officials of Eastern Qi also came to a conclusion. They agreed to the plan of Taoism. Yun Mingzi's words were not alarmist talk, but it was indeed very possible. In the past, when Eastern Qi and Northern Yen fought, Xianglong relied on the power of Northern Yen Jianghu to turn the tables. But at that time, Xianglong only relied on a group of scattered Northern Yen Jianghu forces. And now, Northern Yen had the support of the entire Hidden Devil clan, which was much stronger than before. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu had this intention or not, his existence was a threat. And the officials of Eastern Qi actually had their own thoughts. Lu Haochong sought stability in mediocrity, but it did not mean that the people of Eastern Qi Imperial Court did not have the ambition to expand their territory. They sat on the rich and powerful Central Plains, but watched the rise of Northern Yen, and could not do anything to West Chu. For them, this was simply a shame and a waste. It was not easy for His Majesty to change his usual gentle attitude and was ready to take action. How could they refuse? When Eastern Qi was surging, Chu Xiu was still in a state of closed-door cultivation. Watching so many experts fight in the primitive demon cave, for Chu Xiu, it was not small. But the battle between Zhong Shenxiu and Jun Wuxian was the most important. But Chu Xiu was embarrassed to find that he could not understand it. It was only at this moment that Chu Xiu came to a sudden realization. The connection between him and Dugu Weiwei was much closer than he had imagined. Dugu Weiwei's strength was not as good as Zhong Shenxiu's and Jun Wuxian's. After all, Chu Xiu was not a person of this realm. He could not be sure who was stronger or weaker, but at least they should be on the same level. Chu Xiu had seen several illusions related to Dugu Weiwei. Every time, he would be able to comprehend something from it. Even if he couldn't understand it, he would still be able to learn it. For example, the blade intent of the word break. But watching the battle between Zhong Shenxiu and Jun Wuxian, Chu Xiu could only stare dumbfounded. There was nothing he could do. Of course, most of the martial artists present were dumbfounded. Even at Shang Tianliang's realm, he still couldn't understand the power of the battle between the two. This made Shang Tianliang constantly sigh after he came back. There was always someone stronger than him. Although his strength was several times stronger than when he was in LV-Do, he was still far from being complacent. At this moment, the door to Chu Xiu's seclusion chamber was suddenly knocked open. Mei Qinglian walked in with a dignified expression and said, Eastern Qi has deployed troops to the border and is preparing to attack Northern Yen. Chu Xiu waved his hand indifferently and said, Attack then attack. Haven't there been many conflicts between the two sides over the years? Before, with Xianglong around, Eastern Qi did not dare to act. After all, Xianglong's prestige was still there. But now that Xianglong is dead, Eastern Qi will definitely stir up a wave of trouble. This is normal. Although I helped Xiangli ascend to the throne, the Northern Yen court still belongs to him. I am not his fighter. If he really can't hold on any longer, then it won't be too late to make a move. Mei Qinglian shook her head and said, There is something wrong this time. Eastern Qi has deployed troops to the border not only to attack Northern Yen, but also to attack you. Chu Xiu frowned and said, Me? What grudge do I have with Eastern Qi? Mei Qinglian said, You have no grudge with Eastern Qi, but you have a grudge with the righteous martial arts world. Do you know what slogan Eastern Qi used to launch a crusade against Northern Yen? They said that Northern Yen used you, a demon, to stir up chaos in the Northern Yen court and bring disaster to the people of the Northern Yen. They attacked Northern Yen to save the people of the Northern Land from the demon's wrath. Most importantly, this incident was started by Chunyang Dao sect and Real Martial Arts sect. The righteous martial arts world of Eastern Qi is full of support. Do you still think that this has nothing to do with you? Chu Xiu frowned. This matter, of course, had something to do with him. It should be said that they came for him. But Chu Xiu was very confused. What was wrong with Chunyang Dao sect and Real Martial Arts sect? Why did they have to attack him at this time? Logically speaking, Yi Xiaonan, who had obtained the demonic seed, should have attracted more hatred than him. Mei Qinglian said again, The Northern Yen court is waiting for you to attend a meeting. I guess they are panicking. Chu Xiu nodded. He did not have time to think too much and headed straight for the Northern Yen Palace. At this time, in the Northern Yen Palace, besides Xiang Li, Xiang Chong, Beigong Bailey, and other members of the Northern Yen royal family, the military, and other forces were also there. The army of Eastern Qi was pressing down on the Northern Yen. This was a very tricky matter for all the people in the Northern Yen. Although Northern Yen had won the war under the leadership of Xiang Long, this victory was actually only for himself. For Eastern Qi, it was not a serious loss at all. In the end, Eastern Qi did not continue the war because they did not want to suffer too much damage. Moreover, Lu Haochong was a steady character. If Northern Yen tore off a piece of his flesh, then so be it. Anyway, they could not kill him. Now that Eastern Qi had made a comeback, it was unknown whether Northern Yen could stop them again. Seeing that official Chu Xiu had finally arrived, Xiangli hurriedly said, Official Chu, please take a seat. Regarding the matter of Eastern Qi, do you have any thoughts, Official Chu? Xiangli was panicking. He felt like crying, but no tears would come. It had not been easy for him to be the emperor. Before he ascended to the throne, he had gone through a bloody battle to get to this position. After becoming the emperor, Xiangli did not have the time to enjoy power and other things. He had just ascended to the throne, and there were too many things for him to learn. He did not expect to be better than his father, Xiang Long, but he did not want to lose to Eastern Qi's Lu Haochong either. But before he could finish his work, the news that Eastern Qi was about to launch a large-scale attack came. This almost made Xiangli cry. This was not the way to bully others. Xiang Long had been defeated by Eastern Qi for so many years, but none of them came to avenge him. Now, as soon as he became the emperor, they came to attack him. Picking the soft persimmon to bully? Xiang Chong snorted coldly and said, Your Majesty, you're still asking him if he has any thoughts? Haven't you realized that Chu Xiu was the one who started this war? Diabolism is not tolerated in the pugilistic world. Chu Xiu had enjoyed enough glory in the pugilistic world and brought back a body full of hatred. In the end, the karma still fell on us Northern Yen. Although Xiang Chong had supported Xiang Li's ascension to the throne, and was even grateful that Chu Xiu did not take back his rights to the imperial worship hall, he still could not stand to see Chu Xiu. This was partly because of Xiang Long. Xiang Chong had never interacted with Chu Xiu before, but when Xiang Long was about to die, Xiang Long had spoken ill of Chu Xiu and was very wary of him. First impressions were the strongest. Coupled with his failure in the fight for the throne, it would be strange if Xiang Chong was friendly to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu sneered and said, Your Highness, you have a guilty conscience. Think about it. Even without me, Eastern Qi would not have attacked Northern Yen. When the late emperor was still around, Eastern Qi did not dare to act rashly because of the late emperor's reputation. But now that the late emperor is gone, have you ever thought that Eastern Qi would not make a move? The Northern Yen is not as strong as Eastern Qi. They will definitely join forces with the Northern Yen pugilistic world like the late emperor. When that time comes, won't I have to make a move? Moreover, Eastern Qi has already suffered once. Will they suffer again? Eastern Qi will definitely make use of the power of Eastern Qi's pugilistic world. Dao sect is the national religion of Eastern Qi. Do you think Chunyang Dao sect and martial arts sect will not make a move? No matter how you think about it, the result will be the same. Why should I, Chu Xiao, be the scapegoat? Chu Xiao's words reversed the cause and effect. There was nothing wrong with what he said. Everyone felt that it made sense. In fact, they did think that Eastern Qi would make a move after Xianglong's death. They even took precautions for a period of time. However, during that period, Eastern Qi did not make any moves. Who knew that just when they relaxed a little, Eastern Qi had already deployed their troops at the border. But in fact, Eastern Qi's attack on Northern Yen was Chu Xiao's fault. The people of Northern Yen thought too highly of LV Haochang. His greatest wish in this life was to sit firmly on the throne of the emperor. He would sit there without any achievements or mistakes until he died. He would leave the unification of the world to the next generation. Therefore, even after Xianglong's death, he only threw a big banquet and slept with 3 new beauties. He did not do anything else after that. If it was not for Yun Mingzi and the others' encouragement, Eastern Qi would not have made a move. Xiang Chong glared at Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao's words were so reasonable that he did not know how to refute it. Xiang Li hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Uncle, official Chu, both of you are doing this for the good of Northern Yen. It is not a matter of who is responsible. But now that Eastern Qi's army is approaching our borders, we have to come up with a solution no matter what. Hearing Xiang Li's words, Xiang Chong did not continue to target Chu Xiao. But at the same time, he did not have any good ideas. He had spent most of his life in the Imperial Worship Hall, practicing martial arts. He did not care much about other things. He could kill people, but he was really not good at other things. Therefore, Xiang Li turned his eyes to Chu Xiao. He had great confidence in Chu Xiao. After all, this man had been through several wars between the righteous and the demonic, and had stirred up countless storms in the Jianghu. No one would doubt Chu Xiao's strength, let alone his ability. Chu Xiao thought for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Different situations call for different measures. It is no big deal. Don't forget, the Northern Yen now is much stronger than the Northern Yen of decades ago. Back then, the Northern Yen was able to stop Eastern Qi. Why can't they do it now? Because of the involvement of the Jianghu, we have to deal with both the Jianghu and the battlefield at the same time. Leave the Jianghu to me, and the battlefield to General Beigong. Moreover, the policies that the former emperor made for the Northern Yen are the most suitable for the Northern Yen. There is no harm in using them again." Xiang Li was puzzled. "What policies?" Chu Xiao knocked on the table and said, "Combine vertical and horizontal." Chapter 993. Chu Xiao's interests were now linked with the Northern Yen. In addition, Eastern Qi was obviously targeting Chu Xiao. At this time, Chu Xiao did not hold back and gave his advice to the Northern Yen wholeheartedly. The Northern Yen could not resist Eastern Qi alone. To resist Eastern Qi, they had to unite all the forces that could be united. Although Xiang Li wasn't too smart, he wasn't stupid. He immediately reacted, "West Chu." Chu Xiao nodded and said, "Yes, West Chu. Everyone knows that if the lips are gone, the teeth will be interdependent. As long as the Western Chu royal family is not an idiot, they should know what to choose at this time. Moreover, the former emperor is very far-sighted. He found the people of Zhongshan Pavilion and let them take over Wei Prefecture. They can also be used as a bridgehead to resist Eastern Qi. In this way, the 3 forces will be more powerful than 10 years ago." At this time, Xiang Li smiled bitterly and said, "Zhongshan Pavilion can't be counted on. Father is good at everything, but he miscalculated one thing, and that is Zhongshan Pavilion's shamelessness. Just now, news came that Zhongshan Pavilion has officially established a country in Wei Prefecture, called the State of Wei. But this State of Wei is not the State of Wei that favors our Northern Yen, but the State of Wei of Eastern Qi. These bastards betrayed us and chose to rely on Eastern Qi." When Chu Xiao heard this, he was only a little surprised, but not too surprised. Zhongshan Pavilion's choice was not strange. A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. Zhongshan Pavilion knew what Northern Yen was thinking. It was nothing more than using them as meat shields to resist Eastern Qi. But now, Eastern Qi also promised Zhongshan Pavilion that they could establish a country, and Eastern Qi was more powerful than Northern Yen. In this case, what advantage did Northern Yen have? It should be said that when Xianglong led Zhongshan Pavilion to Wei Prefecture, he should have thought of this. But he didn't know whether Xianglong's brain was damaged before he died, or he overestimated the power of Northern Yen, which led to this result. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Everyone has the right to choose a side. Jiangshan Pavilion and Eastern Qi have their own reasons in the end. Now, it doesn't matter if Jiangshan Pavilion is 1 or 2. It doesn't matter if Jiangshan Pavilion is 1 or 2. It takes time to form alliances. During this period of time, we'll have to see if General Beigong can hold them off." Beigong Bailey said in a deep voice, "The 5 armies are ready to set off at any time. Don't worry, we aren't that useless. We won't be easily defeated by Eastern Qi." Xiang Chong was annoyed to see Chu Xiu giving orders, but he couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't good at this, and Beigong Bailey was a general. The battlefield was his real game. Xiang Li had just ascended the throne, and he was still in a daze. Xiang Chong might not even dare to carry out his orders. It could be said that Chu Xiu was the most qualified to speak about the world situation. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "If that's the case, then choose someone with enough weight and eloquence to go to Western Chu and seek an alliance." Who was the one who made the alliance between Northern Yen and Western Chu? Xiang Chong said with a strange expression, "It was the poison dragon warrior Yang Gongdu, but he should be dead." Chu Xiu also had a strange expression on his face. Of course he knew that Yang Gongdu was dead, and he had died right in front of him. That fellow might not be able to see the situation clearly, but he had a powerful mouth. If he made a move, it would be easy to convince Western Chu. Chu Xiu pondered for a moment before saying, "Then, Your Highness, you should go on this trip. This is a good errand, and Your Highness' status is sufficient." Xiang Chong's face was slightly red as he said, "This king isn't good with words. If I can't explain myself clearly, it will ruin things." Xiang Chong had spent most of his time cultivating in the Imperial Consecrator Hall, so he really couldn't handle this kind of task. Xiang Li suggested, "How about this? Official Chu and Imperial Uncle will handle this matter together. Uncle can represent the Northern Yen court, and Official Chu can represent the Northern Yen society. If the lips died, the teeth would be cold. If the West Chu court was finished, the West Chu Jianghu would not be easy to survive. After all, that was the area with the loosest management of the Jianghu. Official Chu, you and moon-worshipping cults Yi Shaonan are both from the demonic path. If you can convince the moon-worshipping cult to make a move, wouldn't that be even better?" Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Li with a strange expression. He wasn't stupid, he had actually learned to draw inferences. Convincing a portion of the demonic path in Western Chu society to make a move wasn't a problem. But the other side was the moon-worshipping cult, so Chu Xiu didn't dare say he would succeed. It was best for the weak not to guess the thoughts of the strong because you haven't reached that level yet, so you don't know what the strong are thinking. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "No problem, but before we go to Western Chu, we still need to take care of the Northern Yen." Xiang Li was stunned and said, "What else does the Northern Yen need to take care of?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "The bald donkeys from the Great Light Temple are still in the north. If they suddenly make a move, we will be caught off guard. So we need to take care of the Great Light Temple first before we go to Western Chu." Xiang Li immediately said, "Official Chu, how do you plan to take care of the Great Light Temple? The court will definitely cooperate." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "No need. This time, I'm not going to fight the Great Light Temple to the death. I can take care of it in a short time." After all the arrangements were made, the Northern Yen court immediately began to move. When it came to a war that could destroy a country, no one dared to look down on it. Even the lowest soldier had his nerves stretched taut. Chu Xiu called for Shang Tianliang and the others to cause trouble for the Great Light Temple. However, when Chu Xiu went to hurt Shang Tianliang looked at Chu Xiu warily and said, "Brat, are you done yet? Do you really want to make use of this old man's remaining value completely? I can't beat the old monk Su Ci from the Great Light Temple. No matter what you say, I can't beat him." Chu Xiu smiled faintly and said, "Is City Lord Shang admitting defeat? A heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm powerhouse is admitting defeat before the fight even starts. That's not nice to hear." Shang Tianliang snorted and said, "If I can't beat him, then I can't beat him. What's so embarrassing about that? The Great Light Temple's inheritance is right there. The old monk Su Ci's strength is probably even stronger than my Shang clan's ancestors. It's not embarrassing if I can't beat him." Perhaps because Shang Tianliang had grown up in Green Capital, he had never placed much importance on things like reputation and honor. To him, reputation and honor were not as important as a piece of cornbread. Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "Don't worry, I'm not asking you to risk your life this time. I'm just pulling you along to boost my momentum. With the Dao sect working together with Eastern Qi's army, how can I fight to the death with the Great Light Temple at this time?" Shang Tianliang looked at Chu Xiao suspiciously. "How could I not die if I went out with you?" Shang Tianliang was seriously doubtful about this. Also, he suspected that Chu Xiao's life was filled with malice, which was why his killing intent was so strong. He should ask Yuan Ji for help. However, with Master Yuan Ji's personality, even if he did, he would definitely say that Chu Xiao had an unparalleled immortal life providence. When Chu Xiao brought his people to the Great Light Temple, the Great Light Temple had also heard about the news about Eastern Qi. Eastern Qi had caused such a huge commotion that it had triggered a war. This was no longer just a storm in the pugilistic world. In the Great Strengths Hall, Su Yun frowned and said, "I've underestimated Ling Yunzi and Lu Chonglu. I didn't expect them to be so generous." Yuan Guang said, "In my opinion, this isn't the decision of the two current sect masters. It's the handiwork of Yun Mengzi and Han Jusi." Yun Mengzi used to be the head of the 6 spiritual masters of the Chunyang Dao sect. He was the one who had the hope of taking over the position of sect master. Meanwhile, Han Jusi was the sect master of the true martial sect 800 years ago. Both of them have bad tempers, but at the same time, they are very decisive in their actions. Their plans are extremely generous. Hearing Yuan Guang say this, Su Xi and Su Yun looked at each other and nodded lightly without anyone noticing. It was fortunate that the Great Light Temple had sent out Yuan Guang, a senior who had retired 800 years ago. He did not fight for the position. Otherwise it would be troublesome. Su Jing said, "If that's the case, what should the Great Light Temple do? There's no news from the Dao sect." Yuan Guang smiled bitterly and said, "According to what I know about them, they won't send you any news. Especially Yun Mengzi. 800 years ago, the Chunyang Dao sect was very powerful. They were best at suppressing people with their power. Now that the Eastern Qi is ready, they are going to attack the Northern Yan imperial court that worships demons. The righteous and the demonic cannot coexist. Everything is in front of us. How can we turn a blind eye to it?" The few people present frowned. Indeed, the Dao sect not contacting them now was the most troublesome thing. Wasn't the Buddhist lineage also known as the supreme sect of the righteous martial arts world? Moreover, they wanted to annihilate the demonic path right at their doorstep. Yet they just stood there and watched. Even if the Great Light Temple had the nerve to do so, this would be one of the blemishes that they would be mocked by the Dao sect in the future. It would ruin their reputation. Just as everyone was still in a dilemma, a young novice monk suddenly walked in, looking slightly flustered. "Abbot. First seat. This is bad." Chu Xiao has brought a group of subordinates and is heading straight for the Great Light Temple. They're already up the mountain. Hearing this, everyone's expression darkened. Arrogant. Too arrogant. Now, Chu Xiao still has a huge problem on his hands. "We haven't even decided whether or not to find trouble with you, yet you dare to send yourself to our doorstep? Do you have a death wish?" Just as everyone was about to leave, Su Jing suddenly said, "Senior Abbot, be careful." Su Xi nodded. He knew what Su Jing meant. Even if Chu Xiao combined all the forces in his hands, he would not be a threat to the Great Light Temple. However, Chu Xiao had taken the initiative to find trouble with the Great Light Temple before his own troubles came. He, Chu Xiao, was either crazy or he had something to rely on. Based on Chu Xiao's personality, it was most likely the latter. Chapter 994. In front of the main entrance of the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiao's group of experts stood there arrogantly, as though they were on a sightseeing tour. It was not easy to observe the Great Light Temple of the Northern Buddhist sect at such a close distance. However, at this moment, the Great Light Temple's cultivators guarding the gate were looking at Chu Xiao and the others warily. Their faces showed that they were not afraid of death. Clearly, if Chu Xiao and the others dared to do anything like barging into the mountain gate, they would really dare to charge forward and risk their lives. The gate was slowly pushed open. Su Xi and the others walked out and looked at Chu Xiao unkindly. Su Yan was the first to say coldly, "Chu Xiao, What are you doing here at the Great Light Temple? Chu Xiao smiled and said, Your Temple of Great Light is not some dragon's lair or tiger's den, so why can't I come? Su Yan snorted. Chu Xiao, don't be sarcastic here. Taoism is working together with Eastern Qi to suppress the Northern Yen. You are in trouble now. Are you here at the Great Light Temple just to enjoy the scenery? Chu Xiao's expression turned serious and he said in a low voice, Master Su Yan is right. I am here at the Great Light Temple because of this matter. The people from the Great Light Temple were stunned. Taoism is working together with Eastern Qi to suppress the Northern Yen. What are you doing here at the Great Light Temple? Su Yan sneered. Are you here to tell us that Taoism and Buddhism are at odds with each other so that we can help you? If you have such thoughts, I advise you to go back. Although we read scriptures every day, we have not read to the point where our minds are muddled. Chu Xiao shook his head. Of course I want the Great Light Temple to do this, but unfortunately, you won't. On the contrary, I am worried that the Great Light Temple will attack the Martial Suppression Hall. So today I came first. After all, it is better to attack first than to attack later. Hearing this, the people from the Great Light Temple wanted to break their vows and curse. They had never heard of such a ridiculous reason. Just because you are worried that the Great Light Temple will attack you, you came first. What is this? Persecutory delusion? There are always people who want to harm me? The Temple of Great Light was not the one who started this incident. In fact, they were still discussing whether or not they should make a move just now. They had yet to make up their minds. Su Xi said, Chu Xiao, what are you trying to do? Just because of such a ridiculous reason, you personally brought your people and came to my Temple of Great Light in such an aggressive manner? Chu Xiao said solemnly, Abbot Su Xi, this reason isn't funny at all. On the contrary, it's very important. To fend off foreign aggression, we must first stabilize the internal situation. I am currently resisting Eastern Qi and Haotian Taoism. If someone stabs me in the back, who am I going to ask for justice? Chu Xiao's bold and confident words almost made Su Xi laugh in anger. Then tell me, what is the meaning of your visit? Don't tell me you want to destroy the Great Light Temple prematurely? Chu Xiao shook his head. Of course not. The Bodhi Yard of the Great Light Temple has countless experts from the older generation. I can't destroy the Great Light Temple with just these few people. No one in the pugilistic world can destroy the Great Light Temple either. I'm here to ask for a promise from the Great Light Temple. What promise? Chu Xiao squinted. A promise that in this incident, the Great Light Temple will remain neutral and will not attack. We will also have to swear to Buddha. Monks don't lie, not to mention that I've made a vow to Buddha. Su Xi said coldly. Impossible. The Great Light Temple will not give you any promises. Chu Xiao, you're forcing the Great Light Temple again. Perhaps the Great Light Temple wouldn't have made a move before, but now, the Great Light Temple doesn't mind making a move. Putting aside the fact that the Great Light Temple had not made up their mind to attack, even if they had made up their mind not to get involved, they would not give Chu Xiao any promises. Since when did the Great Light Temple, one of the Buddhist sects in the north and south, have to make a promise to someone from the demonic path? Chu Xiao's words completely infuriated Su Xi. He took a step forward, and his body shone with Buddhist light. That powerful aura shot into the sky, and one could vaguely hear the sound of Buddhist chanting in midair. The evil moon saber was held in Chu Xiao's hand, and the inner demon was suppressing the power of the evil moon saber. In that instant, a violent demonic aura swept through the sky. The sky was clear, but the shadow of a moon was reflected in the sky. It was a blood moon. Seeing the confrontation between the two, Shang Tianliang cursed in his heart. Like hell I'll believe you. Previously, this Chu Xiao had promised him that he would not attack this time, but now he had come to provoke him. Wasn't he still going to attack? However, this time, Chu Xiao did not attack directly. Instead, he suppressed the power of the evil moon saber and said with a smile, Master Su Xi, don't be so agitated. I've already experienced your martial arts in the primitive demon cave, and I don't want to experience it again. I'm not asking the Great Light Temple for this promise for free. I'm offering something in exchange. Seeing Chu Xiao restrain his saber, Su Xi also restrained some of his power. He asked, What are you offering? Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes and said, I'll use the lives of 27,396 Buddhist monks in the Northern Yen Kingdom to trade. What did you say? This time, not only Su Ci, but all the warriors from the Great Light Temple released a powerful aura, as if they wanted to swallow Chu Xiu alive. Chu Xiu said coldly, "Masters, don't be so agitated. How do you usually address me? Chu Xiu. Is it the demonic Dao villain? Since I've become a demonic Dao villain, I have to live up to this name. What is the demonic Dao? Despicable, shameless, cruel, murderous, committed all kinds of bad things, and committed all kinds of crimes. Am I right? But this time, I didn't provoke the Dao sect. In the end, not only did the Dao sect want to suppress me, but they also want to destroy the foundation that I've built in the northern Yen for so many years. My principle, Chu Xiu, is that whoever makes life difficult for me, I'll make life difficult for them. Next, I will use all my strength to face the pressure from Eastern Qi and the Dao sect. There can be no mistakes in the future. So, the Great Light Temple has to give me this promise, even if you don't want to. If you really don't give it to me, with an order from me, the Blue Dragon Society's assassins in the northern Yen will immediately pluck the bald heads of 27,396 Buddhist monks in the northern Yen territory. The Great Light Temple will be responsible for all of this. Also, the Northern Yen court will issue a decree to exterminate the Buddhists in the northern Yen territory. Anyone who believes in Buddhism will be exiled to the bitter cold of the far north. Anyone who secretly hides Buddhist scriptures will be punished with treason. Master Su Ci, do you believe that in this way, there will be no trace of your Buddhist lineage in the entire northern Yen within a month? When that time comes, all of you will be the sinners of the Buddhists. When Chu Xiu said this, everyone in the Great Light Temple turned pale. It was as if they wanted to skin Chu Xiu alive. Even Shang Tianliang looked at Chu Xiu in shock. This move was truly sinister. They had seen wicked people, but they had never seen someone so wicked. As the Great Light Temple was close to the northern Yen territory, the northern Yen Dao sect's influence was not strong. On the contrary, there were still some small temples. Although these people were not from the Great Light Temple, they were all disciples of the Buddhists. They came from the same source. That was the lives of more than 20,000 Buddhist disciples. How could the Great Light Temple ignore it? In addition, once the Northern Yen court issued the decree to exterminate the Buddhists, the foundation that the Great Light Temple had spent thousands of years building in the Northern Yen territory would be destroyed in a month's time. After a long while, Su Ci squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Chu Xiu, don't you dare. Chu Xiu held his saber and said expressionlessly, "You'll see if I dare." Master Su Ci, if you have the guts, then make a bet. Or you can leave me in the Great Light Temple right now. The choice is in your hands. Su Ci, who had always appeared to be extremely calm, was so angry that his heart trembled. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "I swear to Buddha that during the time when Eastern Qi and Taoism are attacking Northern Yen, the Temple of Great Light will seal off the mountain. Not a single monk will come out. Are you satisfied now?" Chu Xiu put away his saber and smiled again. "Satisfied? Of course I'm satisfied. Master Su Ci, you're decisive. I'm impressed. If that's the case, I won't disturb you any longer." After that, Chu Xiu waved his hand and led his people down the mountain. After Chu Xiu and the others left, Su Yan was so angry that he was shaking. He could not even speak. Su Jing said coldly, "Shameless." Su Yun snorted and said, "They deserve to die." Yuan Guang sighed and said, 800 years ago, this poor monk had never seen such a shameless and despicable demonic cultivator. The morals of the world are degenerating, and people are not what they used to be. 800 years ago, even the demonic cultivators had to follow the rules. Why has it become like this now? Beside him, Shudu pursed his lips and said, "Most people from the demonic path follow the rules. Chu Xiu is the only one who doesn't. Otherwise, why do you think he has such strength and influence at such a young age? Those who aren't as strong as him have been beaten to death. Those who aren't as shameless as him have been tricked to death by him." Su Ci said nothing with a dark expression. He only waved his hand and said, "Seal the mountain." This time, the Great Light Temple would definitely suffer a loss. There was no point in saying anything more. Chu Xiu could be shameless, but the Great Light Temple could not. They could not ignore the lives of the other monks, and the foundation of the Buddhist lineage in the northern Yen could not be lost either. Therefore, they could only lower their heads. Meanwhile, at the foot of the mountain, Shang Tianliang shook his head slightly and said, Chu Xiao kid, this move of yours is not just any ordinary sneaky move. Those monks from the Great Light Temple will definitely fight you to the death in the future. Moreover, you can only use this move once. I'm afraid it won't work a second time. The people of the Great Light Temple were not idiots. After this incident, they would definitely make arrangements for the Buddhist disciples in the northern Yan territory. They would not be threatened by Chu Xiao like this again. Moreover, after this incident, the Great Light Temple would definitely hate Chu Xiao to the core. If there was another opportunity like this, they would definitely not hesitate and would directly make a move. Chapter 995. Chu Xiao did not underestimate the Great Light Temple and knew the consequences of offending the Great Light Temple. However, for the current Chu Xiao, even if he did not completely offend the Great Light Temple now, it would be the same in the future. Hearing Shang Tianliang say that the Great Light Temple would definitely not rest until he was dead, Chu Xiao said lightly, "It doesn't matter. The righteous and the demonic are opposed. In the future, if I decide to return to the Kunlun Devil cult, the Great Light Temple will still want to tear me into pieces. Anyway, it will happen sooner or later. I just brought this matter forward." Shang Tianliang and the others thought about it carefully. What Chu Xiao said was quite reasonable. Anyway, there were many people in the pugilistic world who wanted to tear him into pieces. The Great Light Temple did not make much of a difference. After dealing with the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiao prepared to go to West Chu with Xiang Chong to meet the moon-worshipping cult and the West Chu royal family. This kind of matter did not require a lot of people, so the people from the Zhenwu Hall, including Shang Tianliang, were arranged by Chu Xiao to stay in the northern Yan to deal with accidents. He and Xiang Chong went all the way to West Chu. Chu Xiao and Xiang Chong did not like each other, so the two of them did not communicate much along the way. Moreover, now that the situation had reached such a critical point, they did not have the mood to chat on the road. They rushed to West Chu as fast as they could. However, after arriving at West Chu, Xiang Chong wanted to find the West Chu royal family first, while Chu Xiao was prepared to find the moon-worshipping cult first. The two of them had a dispute on this point. Chu Xiao said lightly, "Your Highness, the last time the Northern Yan joined forces with West Chu to fight against Eastern Qi, how much effort did West Chu put in?" Xiang Chong frowned and said, "Last time, the West Chu imperial court didn't play tricks. But with their strength, even if they didn't play tricks, their strength is still limited. So last time against Eastern Qi, it was our Northern Yan who was the main attacker. As for the West Chu imperial court, they mainly restrained the power of Eastern Qi. Why do you ask?" Chu Xiao softly said, "The West Chu court's strength can be seen here. They can't be weak, but they can't be considered strong either. But the moon-worshipping cult's strength is certainly strong enough. Moreover, Your Highness should know the status of the moon-worshipping cult in the West Chu land. As long as he dealt with the moon-worshipping cult first, the West Chu imperial court would be much simpler. Moreover, Your Highness, please don't forget that our opponents this time are not only Eastern Qi, but also the forces of the righteous martial arts world." Xiang Chong couldn't beat Chu Xiao in this matter. Since Chu Xiao said so, he had to agree to go to the moon-worshipping cult first. Chu Xiao had been to the moon-worshipping cult once before. It was during the war between the righteous and demonic forces. But that time, everyone just fought outside and didn't go inside to watch. This time, when Chu Xiao came, after reporting his name, Dong Huang Tai, the moon-worshipping cult's high priest, and the moon-worshipping cult saintess personally came to greet him. With Chu Xiao's current strength and status, he was qualified to receive this kind of treatment. Dong Huang Tai still had some injuries that hadn't healed. When fighting for the demon seed, he burned his blood essence to help Yi Xiaonan get the demon seed. This kind of consumption couldn't be recovered in a short time. As for the moon-worshipping cult's high priest, Chu Xiao didn't have many dealings with him, but he heard that he was low-key and mysterious. Among them, the one that Chu Xiao had the most dealings with was the moon-worshipping cult saintess. But after seeing her, Chu Xiao stared at her. Of course, Chu Xiao had never seen a beautiful woman before. He was just curious about the current state of the moon-worshipping cult saintess. She was actually still in the unity of heaven and man state. Most of the martial artists who entered the Longhu list with Chu Xiao had now stepped into the real pellet state. If it was someone else, it would be normal even if their strength was weak, but it was the moon-worshipping cult saintess. The moon-worshipping cult saintess chuckled and said, "Why is official Chu staring at me? Are you interested in me? If it's others, I will definitely refuse. If it's you, official Chu, I can consider it." Chu Xiao smiled and said, "Even if I want to, Master Yi won't be willing. The moon-worshipping cult saintess won't be abducted by an outsider." After making a joke, Chu Xiao walked into the moon-worshipping cult under the lead of Dong Huang Tai and the moon-worshipping cult's high priest. Following behind Chu Xiao, Xiang Chong was a little upset. When he was in the Northern Yan, he didn't feel that he was worse than Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao had the Zhenwu Hall, and he also had the Royal Consecrator Hall. Chu Xiao had the hidden demon lineage, and he was also the Northern Yan Lord. Chu Xiao was powerful. Although he couldn't defeat him, with the 9 dragon seal, he still had the power to fight. But as soon as the result came out, the difference was obvious. Chu Xiao's current reputation was built by him. As a demon, even the moon-worshipping cult, the current leader of the demon, would not neglect Chu Xiao. In addition to Yi Xiaonan, the 3 high-level officials came out to greet him, and their attitude was also very polite. As for Xiang Chong, although he wasn't ignored, it was obvious that those in the moon-worshipping cult didn't take him seriously. As a Northern Yan Lord, what achievements did he have outside of the Northern Yan? The people of Jianghu recognized the fist, not the identity of the Northern Yan royal family. Xiang Chong followed Dong Huang Tai and the others into the moon-worshipping cult. The scenery along the way was extremely beautiful. The scenery was pleasant, and even some of the buildings were designed in a very novel way. It was as if they were one with the scenery, and Xiang Chong was slightly surprised. Previously, he always thought that the interior of a big demon sect like the moon-worshipping cult must be extremely gloomy. Who would have thought that it was like a paradise on earth? Moreover, the disciples of the moon-worshipping cult didn't have the gloomy feeling of ordinary demon martial artists. Instead, the men were handsome, and the women were fair and beautiful. This made Xiang Chong secretly wonder. Could it be that the moon-worshipping cult chose disciples based on appearance first? At the sacred lake in the center of the moon-worshipping cult, Yi Xiaonan sat in a pavilion by the lake, waiting for Chu Xiao and the others. Previously, when Yi Xiaonan obtained the demon seed, Chu Xiao thought that he should be in a state of closed-door training. But now, it seemed that Yi Xiaonan wasn't in seclusion. Was he not in a hurry to refine the demon seed? As he thought about it, Chu Xiao and Xiang Chong walked over and cupped their hands. "Greetings, Hierarch Yi." Yi Xiaonan looked at Chu Xiao, and Chu Xiao also looked at Yi Xiaonan. At this moment, both of them paused at the same time. This was the first time that Chu Xiao officially met the #1 demon in the world, and Yi Xiaonan had naturally heard of Chu Xiao's name. In fact, according to the standpoint of the two sides, the two should be hostile. However, with the pressure of the righteous sects, even if the demon lineage wasn't in the same camp, they wouldn't kill each other at this time. The two sides didn't have any hostility when they met. But at this moment, Yi Xiaonan suddenly said, "That stone that looks like a knife, what is it?" Dong Huang Tai felt embarrassed when he heard Yi Xiaonan suddenly ask such a question. Hierarchy was too straightforward. How could this kind of thing be asked face to face? Even if it was out of curiosity, it was good to beat around the bush. Moreover, why would Chu Xiao say it? Chu Xiao was also stunned when he heard Yi Xiaonan say this, but then he reacted. Yi Xiaonan didn't ask this because he coveted his stone knife, nor did it contain any other meaning. It was purely out of curiosity. Chu Xiao didn't believe in Yi Xiaonan's character, but he believed in Yi Xiaonan's pride. If Yi Xiaonan was really interested in the stone knife and wanted to snatch it, his first reaction would definitely be to directly snatch it instead of probing. With his strength, there was no point in being secretive like this. Therefore, Chu Xiao paused and said directly, "That is a knife embryo condensed from the dragon vein of the demon dragon. Only the rootless sacred flame can refine it into a knife." In the past, before Dugu Weiwei's listen to spring rain was refined, it was also this kind of knife embryo. Dong Huang Tai and the others suddenly gasped. They didn't expect that the seemingly unremarkable stone knife had such a great origin. It was actually an existence of the same origin as the demonic knife listened to spring rain. Of course, what surprised them even more was that Chu Xiao actually said it after Yi Xiaonan asked this question. They really couldn't understand these two people. Yi Xiaonan wasn't surprised. He just nodded and said, "So that's how it is." His curiosity had been satisfied. Moreover, not to mention that what Chu Xiao obtained was only a knife embryo. Even if it was the complete listen to spring rain, Yi Xiaonan wouldn't be interested. The crescent blade in his hand was a magic weapon that he had personally forged. The tool spirit was unusually compatible with him. No matter how good listen to spring rain was, it wasn't his knife. Why did you come to moon-worshipping cult this time? Yi Xiaonan asked. Chu Xiao said in a low voice, I think you all already know what happened in Eastern Qi. The Dao lineage joined forces with the Eastern Qi imperial court to attack Northern Yan. But in fact, their target is me. I didn't expect the orthodox lineage, especially the Dao lineage, to have this kind of courage. Therefore this time, I also want to ask moon-worshipping cult to help. Yi Xiaonan didn't speak. He pondered for less than 3 breaths of time and only spat out a word. Yes. Xiang Chong, who was standing to the side, stared with his eyes wide open. What was going on? Previously, he was still thinking about how Chu Xiao should use his glib tongue to persuade Yi Xiaonan to help. In the end, Chu Xiao only made clear his purpose of coming, and the other party actually agreed. Wasn't this too simple? If he had known it was so simple, he probably wouldn't have needed Chu Xiao to come this time. He could have done it himself. East Emperor Tai Yi and the High Priest also didn't expect Yi Xiaonan to agree so quickly. They were just about to say something when Yi Xiaonan knocked on the table and spat out 4 words. Without the lips, the teeth will be cold. Yi Xiaonan agreed so quickly not because he didn't use his brain, nor because Chu Xiao had a big face, but because of these 4 words. In the past, when moon-worshipping cult was besieged by the orthodox martial arts world as a target, whether it was the time when the 2 sides joined forces at Fuyu, or when Yi Xiaonan went out of seclusion to attack the orthodox, although the Yinma lineage asked for some benefits, they also took action. This time, Yi Xiaonan agreed so quickly because of these 4 words. The bright devil and the hidden devil were both devils. This time, they turned a blind eye. Next time, they would be the unlucky ones. Chapter 996. As for Yi Xiaonan, it was very difficult for Chu Xiao to describe him. Although he came from the #1 demonic path sect and had single-handedly raised the moon-worshipping cult to its current peak, in reality, Yi Xiaonan didn't have much of the demonic path style. In Chu Xiao's opinion, Yi Xiaonan wasn't ruthless enough or despicable enough. Of course, he wouldn't be indecisive or soft-hearted. In terms of doing things, he had always used the identity of the moon-worshipping cult's leader to carry out various plans with absolute rationality. However, when it came to being a person, he wasn't a sect master, nor was he a demon. If Chu Xiao were to insist, Yi Xiaonan should only be a martial artist, a pure martial artist. Perhaps it could be said that when one reached his realm, they were fully deserving of the title of powerhouse. Yi Xiaonan wasn't a martial maniac, but he was tireless in his pursuit of power. It was because of this that he was able to successfully cultivate the Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra and become the #1 demonic path cultivator. It was very difficult to become an opponent with such a person because the other party had no weaknesses. Unless you could completely defeat the other party in terms of strength, you wouldn't be able to defeat the other party. But it was much easier to become an ally with such a person. As long as you didn't play tricks and put the interests of all sides on the table, Yi Xiaonan would naturally make the most suitable choice for the moon-worshipping cult. Before coming to West Chu, Chu Xiao had already expected this. As long as he clearly said everything, with Yi Xiaonan's personality, he would naturally know what to choose. But at this time, Yi Xiaonan said, the moon-worshipping cult will make a move, but the moon-worshipping cult will not leave West Chu. Xiang Chong's expression couldn't help changing. What was the point of not leaving West Chu? What was the difference between agreeing and not agreeing? But then Yi Xiaonan said, similarly, none of the righteous sects in the land of West Chu will leave West Chu. Chu Xiao nodded and said, it is enough for the moon-worshipping cult to do this. This one is very grateful. Xiang Chong rubbed his head. Only now did he understand what Yi Xiaonan meant. There were quite a few righteous sects in West Chu. Just the Celestial Master Mansion was the biggest threat. There was also the Forgetting Sword Hut and the Storm Sword Tomb. Although the Chunyang Dao sect and the Real Martial Arts Order were the ones who started the fight, they were fighting in the name of killing the demons. It was hard to guarantee that the other righteous sects would not take action. This was also the reason why Chu Xiao had forced the Great Light Temple to make a promise. As long as the moon-worshipping cult could stop the righteous forces of West Chu, it would be a great help to Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao said at this time. That's right, this time I came to West Chu not only to ask the moon-worshipping religion to help, but also to contact the West Chu royal family. I also want to inquire about the relationship between the West Chu royal family and the moon-worshipping cult. Which side will they stand on? Now that the two sides had decided to join forces, Dong Huang Tai and the high priest of the moon-worshipping cult treated Chu Xiao and his companion better. Hearing this, East Emperor Tai said, West Chu royal family? That's hard to say. You know the situation in West Chu. The martial arts world is chaotic and the power of the imperial court is very weak. It is so weak that the words of the imperial court are not as effective as the big sects in the martial arts world. They even often ask us for help to deal with the martial arts world's affairs. So the relationship between the West Chu royal family and the martial arts world is not that tense. It should be said that they have a good relationship with everyone. The West Chu royal family's imperial astronomer is a priest from the Celestial Master Mansion. Every year, the emperor will go to the Celestial Master Mansion to pray for blessings. If they were not afraid of offending the moon-worshipping cult, the West Chu royal family would be willing to let the Celestial Master Mansion become the national religion. But at the same time, the people of the moon-worshipping cult have some privileges in West Chu. Many of the imperial doctors in the palace are disciples of the moon-worshipping cult. Chu Xiao had a strange expression and said, The disciples of the moon-worshipping cult are imperial doctors? The high priest of the moon-worshipping cult laughed and said, Official Chu, don't be blinded by a leaf. You need to know that voodoo can kill and also save people. The path of life and death is in your heart. Whether you kill or save, it all depends on how you want to use it. Dong Huang Tai waved his hand in disdain and said, All right, don't talk about your useless theories. After rebuking the high priest, Dong Huang Tai turned to Chu Xiao and said, Official Chu, if you want to go to the West Chu royal family, I can go with you. The West Chu royal family will give face to the moon-worshipping cult. Of course, it is up to you how to negotiate. Chu Xiao nodded and said, Then I will have to trouble Lord Dong Huang Tai. After the discussion, Chu Xiao and the others did not delay and followed Dong Huang Tai to West Chu's capital city, Jiangdu City. As the weakest of the three countries, Jiangdu City was not as good as the Eastern Qi's Great Liang City and the Northern Yan's Yanjing City. Although Jiangdu City was a capital city, it was not bad. But compared to the other two, it was much smaller. Dong Huang Tai said that he had some faith in the West Chu royal family. This was not an exaggeration. As soon as he entered the city, someone reported the news. Before Chu Xiao and the others could enter the city, a short and fat old man in brocade smiled and said, Lord Dong Huang Tai, you haven't come to Jiangdu City for a long time. How come you have time to come today? Since you are here, don't be in a hurry to leave. Recently, my men caught a 7-colored golden pheasant in the 100,000 mountains. It is a rare treasure. Later, I will have someone add some mushrooms to stew it and we will have a good meal. The short and fat old man looked funny, but Chu Xiao could feel that he was also in the spiritual refinement realm. Of course, if he was not in the spiritual refinement realm, he would not dare to be friends with Dong Huang Tai and call him brother. At this time, when the short and fat old man saw Chu Xiao, his eyes narrowed. Obviously he recognized Chu Xiao, but he said, These two are. Dong Huang Tai said lightly, the number one of the young generation in the demon path, the leader of the martial suppression hall, the official Chu Xiao, who controls the northern Yan Jianghu. Haven't you heard of him? As for the other one, he is the leader of the northern Yan Imperial Consecration Hall, the northern King Xiang Chong of the northern Yan. Dong Huang Tai pointed at the short and fat old man and said, This is the general of the Langya army, jade-faced flying dragon Yuan Fu. Hearing this name, Chu Xiao and Xiang Chong's expressions became extremely strange. They knew that the Langya army was the strongest army in the West Chu army. It was equivalent to the 5 armies of the northern Yan kingdom. Of course, there were 5 of the 5 armies of the kingdom, but West Chu only had 1 Langya army. But who would have thought that this funny-looking short and fat old man was the general of the Langya army? Wasn't his image a little too different? Most importantly, his nickname was Jade-Faced Flying Dragon, which was very funny. Flying Dragon was fine, but what if he was very fast? After all, size did not mean speed. But what the hell was Jade-Faced? How could this look be called Jade-Faced? Yuan Fu did not care about the looks of Chu Xiao and Xiang Chong. He just rubbed his hands awkwardly and said, Do you want to see His Majesty? Dong Huang Tai rolled his eyes and said, "If we don't want to see His Majesty, why did we come all the way to Zhengdu?" Yuan Fu laughed and said, "His Majesty has been a little tired recently, so it's not convenient for him to come. How about this, you can stay at my place for a night, and I'll hold a welcoming dinner for you. After reporting tomorrow, you can go see His Majesty." At this moment, Dong Huang Tai's eyes suddenly turned gloomy. "Yuan Fu, you and I are old friends. You can fool others, but now you want to fool me? Don't play tricks with me. What is His Majesty doing?" Yuan Fu slapped his thigh and smiled bitterly. "Don't vent your anger on me. I have no choice." People from the Celestial Master Mansion, the Forgetting Sword Hut, and the Storm Sword Tomb are all here. If you go in again, won't you fight? I can only send you away first. Hearing Yuan Fu say this, Chu Xiao and Xiang Chong looked at each other and their hearts sank. There were many smart people in the martial world. What they could think of, others could also think of. The Celestial Master Mansion and other forces were in West Chu. Even if they thought of it late, they were the ones who got there first. Dong Huang Tai sneered. "Oh, you're all here. It's quite lively. How about bringing us along? Brother Yuan, don't worry. We'll give you face, but we'll do it inside the Imperial City." Hearing Dong Huang Tai say this, Yuan Fu could only bring them into the Imperial City. They didn't want to offend people from the righteous path, so they naturally didn't want to offend people from the demonic path either. At this time, in the Imperial Palace, a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe sat at the top. Below him sat 3 people. One of them was the Celestial Master Mansion's senior Qing. Beside him stood Shen Longzi. Actually, the Celestial Master Mansion didn't want to get involved this time. It was just that Eastern Qi was making more and more noise. The Celestial Master Mansion was one of the 3 great Taoist sections. The other 2 sects had already raised the banner of killing demons. If the Celestial Master Mansion didn't do anything, it wouldn't be good. The other 2 were Yan Ji of the Storm Sword Tomb and Xin Baochen of the Forgetting Sword Hut. Their goal was simple. They wanted to test the West Chu royal family's attitude. If the West Chu royal court was with the righteous path, they would be like a tiger with wings. But on the other hand, if the West Chu royal court was with the demonic path, they would have to kill this idea as soon as possible. The West Chu emperor, Meng Yunqing, was a middle-aged man with a scholarly appearance. He didn't have the domineering aura of an emperor. Instead, he had a scholarly aura. Among the current emperors of the 3 countries, Meng Yunqing wasn't the most mediocre one. He had the same ambition as Xiang Long. But it was a pity that the northern Yan still had some foundation. With their West Chu country's power, no matter how ambitious Meng Yunqing was, no matter how strong he couldn't change the situation. Now that they could ensure the West Chu dynasty's inheritance, it was already because of the ancestors' protection. Chapter 997. Meng Yunqing was having a headache. Originally, this was just a dispute in the pugilistic world. As the West Chu emperor, he had no right to be involved. However, now that Eastern Qi had joined the fray, he was in a dilemma. Especially when the 3 sects were asking him about his stance, how would he know what his stance should be? Hence, Meng Yunqing said perfunctorily, "I know why the 3 of you are here. However, this matter needs to be discussed at length. Why don't the 3 of you rest for a while? I will inform the 3 of you when the discussion is done. What do you think?" Shen Baochen said plainly, "Your Majesty, do we need to discuss this matter at length? We just want to know if Your Majesty is going to stand on the side of the righteous path or the diabolism. That is enough. We also believe that Your Majesty will make the right choice." Before Meng Yunqing could speak, Dong Huang Tai snorted coldly, "Standing on your side is the right choice. Otherwise, it is the wrong choice? Shen Baochen, since you have spoken, what else can the others say? You are not letting Your Majesty choose. You are forcing Your Majesty to make a choice." Seeing Dong Huang Tai and Chu Xiao walk into the hall, the few present frowned. The diabolism's reaction was not slow. They had caught up to West Chu so quickly. Chu Xiao said plainly, "Everyone, this matter has nothing to do with the 3 of you. The Chunyang Dao sect and the real martial arts sect did not care about the common people and started a war. When the time comes, the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. They will have to bear the consequences. Do you want to bear the consequences too?" Shen Baochen shook his head and said, Chu Xiao, the one who really did not care about the common people is you. Do you really think the whole pugilistic world doesn't know what you did in the Northern Yen? Killing wantonly, suppressing the dissidents. The whole Northern Yen pugilistic world is trembling under your knife. The huge Northern Yen has become a den of demons. The people are plunged into misery and suffering today in exchange for peace in the future. Chu Xiao laughed coldly and said, What a joke! You're not a Northern Yen man, so what right do you have to speak up for those Northern Yen forces? If it wasn't for me keeping an eye on them, they would have killed more people than I did. Once a hero pulls out his sword, it will be another 10 years of calamity for the common people. All of you are heroes, and all of you want to be heroes. However, little do you know that the ones who bring calamity to the world are you, the heroes who claim to be righteous. That senior Qing of Mount Longhu stood up and said indifferently, Solitary Yin does not grow, solitary Yang does not grow. Chu Xiao, you are also proficient in my Taoist martial arts, so you should know what these words mean. The righteous and demonic paths need to find a balance. Right now, your demonic path is glorious enough. In the past few righteous and demonic wars, you demonic Tao always had the upper hand. In the primitive demon cave, the ones who benefited were your demonic Tao. If we let you go on like this, are you going to go to Kunlun Mountain and rebuild the devil cult in the future? Chu Xiao looked at the sleepy senior Qing and really wanted to say yes. However, before he could speak, Dong Huangtai sneered. Yes, my ass. Old Taoist, your Mount Longhu was forced by the cult master to seal off your mountain for a year, and now you still have the face to meddle in these things. Another day, when the cult master comes to your Mount Longhu, will you behave yourself? Senior Qing's sleepy eyes opened wide and revealed a trace of coldness. Dong Huangtai, do you really think my celestial master mansion is afraid of your moon-worshipping cult? Last time, the old celestial master didn't want people to die, so he showed mercy and didn't fight head-on. Do you really think Yi Xiaonan is #1 in the world? Dong Huangtai sneered. So what? The sect master's demonic might is unrivaled, but your Mount Longhu only has you 2 old men to support it. When the 2 of you kick the bucket, I will slaughter your celestial master abode sooner or later and turn your Mount Longhu into a snake cat mountain. Both in West Chu, the celestial master mansion was the strongest of the righteous sects, and the moon-worshipping cult was the strongest of the demonic sections. The grievances between the 2 sides were endless, so Dong Huangtai didn't hold back when he spoke. On the other side, Meng Yunqing saw that both sides were about to fight, so he hurriedly advised, Calm down, you two. Let's talk this out. However, as an emperor, his presence was extremely low, and the people on both sides didn't listen to him at all. Senior Qing threw away the cane in his hand, and lightning flashed around him. A thunder god Dama idol appeared behind him. Dong Huangtai, you're courting death. I gave you some face, but you still dare to open a dye shop? Even if I kick the bucket one day, I will still drag you down with me. As soon as he finished speaking, Senior Qing directly rushed towards Dong Huangtai, the purple heaven thunder in his hand shining. How did that power seem like someone who was about to die? Dong Huangtai sneered. Then this lord will send you down first. Boundless black demonic flames rose, and the power of the burning sky mirror had been exerted to the extreme by Dong Huangtai. Even though he hadn't completely recovered from the loss of vitality in the primitive demon cave, it didn't affect his combat power at this time. Although the 2 of them fought, they were still restrained. They didn't directly blow up Meng Yunqing's palace, but directly rushed out of the palace and fought fiercely outside. Xian Longzi looked at Chu Xiao at this time, and he said, Official Chu is now famous in the martial world, but last time, you and I didn't fight to our heart's content. This time, you and I both stepped into the real fire spirit refinement realm. I want to see Official Chu's true strength. In the past, Xian Longzi had fought with Chu Xiao once, but at that time, Chu Xiao was only a half-step real pellet realm, and he was a real pellet realm. It could be considered as bullying the weak. As a result, he couldn't suppress Chu Xiao, and he was interrupted by Chu Wuji halfway. Now he had stepped into the real fire spirit refinement realm not long ago, and Chu Xiao had even caught up and stepped into the real fire spirit refinement realm earlier than him. Xian Longzi didn't have any jealousy, but he was very interested in Chu Xiao. As his voice fell, Xian Longzi's figure moved, and he rushed towards Chu Xiao. His figure turned into a lightning, and his speed was extremely fast. In the past, When Chu Xiu faced Xian Longzi's terrifying speed, he couldn't even see the opponent's figure with the heaven sun gazing at air technique. Now, Chu Xiu didn't care about any speed. He condensed the annihilation fire around him, and he slapped Xian Longzi away. Lightning exploded, and the lightning around Xian Longzi condensed into a liquid that revolved around his body, extinguishing the world-extinguishing flames that were like maggots in his bones. Although he suffered a loss, Xian Longzi still laughed loudly and said, "Haha, awesome." With a loud roar, Xian Longzi rushed towards Chu Xiu again, and the two fought outside the hall again. Shan Baochen and Yan Ji looked at each other. Since they were fighting over there, they certainly couldn't be idle, so they rushed towards Xiang Chong together. In fact, they didn't know who Xiang Chong was. As a prince of the Northern Yan and the person in charge of the Imperial Consecration Hall, Xiang Chong was very famous in the Northern Yan. However, outside of the Northern Yan, he was just a nobody. However, in Shen Baochen and Yan Ji's opinion, regardless of who the other party was, anyone who was so close to people like Chu Xiu and Dong Huangtai was definitely a demon. They just had to fight. At the sight of this, Xiang Chong cursed inwardly as he frantically defended himself. Since he came in, he hadn't said a word. Why did he have to be beaten? Most importantly, Dong Huangtai and Chu Xiu were fighting one-on-one. If it was me, why is it a siege? Don't you have any shame? The few of them fought all the way to the outside of the palace. The power directly attracted all the experts in the palace, but unfortunately, no one dared to stop them. West Chu was not strong. In the entire West Chu royal family, or even the West Chu court, the strongest person was only Yuan Fu, who was in the true fire spirit refinement realm. He was about the same level as Xiang Chong and could not be compared to Chu Xiu or Dong Huangtai. At this time in the field, everyone had already exchanged a few blows. Although it was chaotic, it was still clear who had the upper hand and who was at a disadvantage. Dong Huangtai's side was obviously at a disadvantage. Senior Qing from Longhu Mountain looked like he was going to die no matter how you looked at it. However, his strength was extremely shocking. His strength was unfathomable, and the exquisiteness of his attacks was accumulated through countless battles. In addition, Dong Huangtai's injuries from burning his blood essence had not yet healed, so he was at a disadvantage. As for Chu Xiu's side, he completely had the upper hand. Xian Longzi was the most talented person in the generation of the Celestial Master Mansion. If it was not for his personality that often went crazy, perhaps the person in charge of the Celestial Master Mansion would be him. After entering the true fire spirit refinement realm, Xian Longzi's strength was even more shocking. His speed was extremely fast, and his body could even transform into the thunder of heaven and earth. Before his voice even arrived, he was already there. With a casual strike, the 5 thunder execution fell like a thunderstorm. The power was simply shocking. However, no matter how shocking the power was, it could not withstand the extreme power. The peerless heavenly saber's damage was too serious. To use the evil moon saber, one had to rely on the heart demon to suppress the weapon spirit. There was too little time, so Chu Xiu directly used his body to fight Xian Longzi. No matter how fast Xian Longzi was, as long as he came into contact with Chu Xiu's world-extinguishing flame, he would immediately retreat far away and use his own strength to resist the power of the world-extinguishing flame. As long as Chu Xiu's fist flew over, Xian Longzi would have to use all his strength to resist. After all, he had just entered the true fire spirit refinement realm. In terms of power, he was completely suppressed by Chu Xiu. The most unlucky person was Xiang Chong. He really could not hold on much longer. Although Yan Ji had also entered the true fire spirit refinement realm not long ago, his talent was extraordinary. He had merged with the divine weapon Yan Ji from a young age, so his strength was definitely not weak among the 5 sword sections. As for Shen Baochen, he was even more terrifying. The leader of the sword hut was in the prime of his life and was still very young. It could even be said that among the 5 sword sects, he had the greatest hope of entering the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Furthermore, by relying on some external objects, Shen Baochen could even directly exchange blows with existences in the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Right now, it was much easier to deal with Xiang Chong without the 9 dragon seal. Under their combined attacks, Xiang Chong was already vomiting blood after a few moves. Chapter 998. A total of 7 true fire spirit refinement realm experts were fighting in the West Chu Imperial Palace. Even though they had restrained their strength, they still managed to destroy the entire palace's array. Meng Yunqing finally couldn't take it anymore. He angrily shouted, "Stop! All of you stop!" This was the West Chu Imperial Palace and he was the West Chu Emperor. In the end, this group of people were fighting in front of him. Was there still any law? Were they not putting him in their eyes? This was too much of a bully. Meng Yunqing was the emperor after all and these two groups of people needed his help. Seeing that Meng Yunqing was truly angry, both sides could only stop. Xiang Chong saw that Shen Baochen and Yan Ji had retreated and he let out a sigh of relief. If they had continued fighting, he would have died here. At this time, Yuan Fu was staring at Dong Huang Tai. Who would believe you? Who was the one who said they wouldn't fight? Dong Huang Tai sensed Yuan Fu's gaze. He shrugged and pointed at Senior Qing, implying that he would only promise that he wouldn't attack. But if that old man wanted to cause trouble for him, he couldn't just let himself be captured, could he? Meng Yunqing let out a long sigh and said, "I say everyone, can't we just talk things out? Why do you have to fight? My West Chu is a small country, and you want to force this emperor to take a side. This emperor doesn't know what to do." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "I know this is difficult for your majesty, so I won't make any promises. I just want to ask your majesty a few questions." Meng Yunqing was stunned and said, "Official Chu, please speak." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Between the righteous and demonic sects, your majesty doesn't need to consider the matters of the pugilistic world. The pugilistic world is the pugilistic world and the court is the court. I just want to ask your majesty, without considering the righteous and demonic sects, if Eastern Qi attacks the Northern Yan, will West Chu help or not?" Meng Yunqing immediately said, "Help! Of course we have to help. The teeth are cold without the lips. If the Northern Yan is destroyed, with our West Chu's strength, we will be destroyed within 3 months with 100% certainty." Meng Yunqing was very clear about his own power. Sometimes the Northern Yan called themselves the Great Yan, and sometimes the Eastern Qi called themselves the Great Qi. Only West Chu, whether it was internally or externally, would always call themselves West Chu. They had never called themselves the Great Chu, because they knew that with West Chu's power, they could not afford to be called great. Chu Xiu asked again, "Then, your majesty, do you think that Eastern Qi will be coerced and controlled by the Jianghu forces after so many years of dealing with Eastern Qi?" Meng Yunqing thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Of course not." As the overlord of the Central Plains, the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, the Eastern Qi Imperial family is definitely not weak. And Lord Chu, to put it bluntly, don't think that you're the supreme leader of the martial arts world in the land of Northern Yan, ruling over the Jianghu of Northern Yan. But in the Northern Yan Imperial Court, you don't have the final say, do you? You can support a direct descendant of the Xiong Imperial family to ascend to the throne, but don't even think about supporting a branch to ascend to the throne. Only when what you do does not cross the bottom line of the Northern Yan Imperial Court, and is in line with their interests, will there be no conflict between you two. Otherwise, the Northern Yan Imperial family will not allow the power to fall into the hands of an outsider, even at the cost of a life-and-death struggle. Hearing Meng Yunqing's words, Xiang Chong couldn't help but puff out his chest. As an emperor, Meng Yunqing could see these things clearly, even more clearly than Xiang Chong. This time, when Chu Xiu helped Xiang Li seize the throne, it was within the bounds of the rules. That was why he could succeed and gain the approval of the entire Northern Yan Imperial Court. But if he did not follow the rules and supported a person who was not qualified to ascend to the throne, or an outsider to ascend to the throne, he would definitely suffer the backlash of the entire Northern Yan Imperial family and the Imperial Court, even to the point of a life-and-death struggle. After he finished speaking, Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "If that's the case, then why is your majesty still hesitating? Has your majesty not seen the cause and effect of this?" Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Meng Yunqing's expression changed slightly. Clearly he had thought of something. Meng Yunqing was not a mediocre person. On the contrary, he was much smarter than Lu Haochong, and more daring. It was just that Western Chu was inherently weak. Even if it was a hero like Xiang Long, he would not be able to reverse the situation. Therefore, after careful consideration, Meng Yunqing understood the meaning of Chu Xiu's words. If Eastern Qi attacked Northern Yan, Western Chu would not sit idly by, just like the war between the three countries. No matter what promises Eastern Qi made, Western Chu would not believe them. On the contrary, If Northern Yan was more powerful than Eastern Qi, then Western Chu would help Northern Yan. This time, Meng Yunqing was hesitant because it was not only because of the interests and grudges between the three countries, but also because of the Jianghu, as well as the conflict between the Orthodox and the devil. That was why Meng Yunqing was so hesitant. But Chu Xiu's second question reminded him that the Jianghu was the Jianghu, and the imperial court was the imperial court. The two could work together, but they should also look at each other separately. The Orthodox martial arts world could not influence the decisions of the Eastern Qi imperial court. Now, both sides were working together because they had a common goal. The Orthodox martial arts world wanted to destroy Chu Xiu, the devil, and Eastern Qi was coveting Northern Yan. If Western Chu did not intervene this time and allowed Eastern Qi to destroy Northern Yan, then Eastern Qi's next target would be Western Chu. Just like what Meng Yunqing said, at that time, Western Chu would not even last for 3 months. Don't be fooled by the righteous sect's high-sounding words, like they were worried about the common people and were afraid that people would be plunged into misery and suffering. But once Eastern Qi attacked Western Chu, let's not talk about whether they would intervene. Even if they really wanted to intervene, would Eastern Qi listen to them? Would they stop their footsteps to unify the world? Even if Lu Haochong was fatuous, even if he was an idiot, would he stop if he was only half a step away from unifying the world and accomplishing the great feat that Eastern Qi's previous emperors had failed to achieve? At that time, other than surrendering, Western Chu would have no other way out. Never put your future in the hands of others. Meng Yunqing was very clear about this point. After a long while, Meng Yunqing let out a long sigh and said to Senior Qing and the others, "Everyone, I'm sorry. Western Chu does not want to intervene in the martial arts world's disputes, nor do we want to interfere in the feud between the orthodox and the evil. But Eastern Qi is Western Chu's archenemy. If the lips are gone, the teeth will be interdependent. I know this. So if Eastern Qi sends troops to Northern Yan, Western Chu will also send troops to Eastern Qi." Without waiting for Senior Qing and the others to continue, Meng Yunqing said in a low voice, "Yuan Fu." "Here." Yuan Fu immediately straightened his plump body and stepped in front of Meng Yunqing at an extremely fast speed. From tomorrow onwards, Langya army will immediately move to the border of Eastern Qi. At the same time, gather the Western Chu army and send troops to Eastern Qi. Hearing Meng Yunqing's words, Senior Qing and the others all shook their heads. As the Western Chu emperor, Meng Yunqing still had this bit of decisiveness. Once he decided on something, he would not change his mind. Moreover, they were all sects from Western Chu and usually had a good relationship with the Western Chu imperial court. Naturally, they knew Meng Yunqing's difficulties. This time, Meng Yunqing could not be blamed for choosing to stand on the side of the evil. He only chose to stand on the side of Northern Yan. If there was anything to blame, it could only be said that Eastern Qi was too strong. Anyone would feel threatened by it. So when they heard Meng Yunqing's decision, they did not say anything harsh. They just cupped their hands and left. Of course, they still did not have a good attitude towards Chu Xiu, Eastern Emperor Taiyi, and the others. After Senior Qing and the others left, Meng Yunqing turned to Chu Xiu and the others and said amiably, "This is official Chu's first time coming to Eastern Qi. We will order people to prepare a banquet to entertain you." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Many thanks for your Majesty's kindness, but Eastern Qi's army has already arrived. Perhaps they have already started fighting. Time is of the essence and we must go back to support them." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Meng Yunqing did not insist and let Chu Xiu and the others leave first. After everyone had left, Meng Yunqing suddenly slumped down on the dragon throne, looking extremely exhausted. "Your Majesty!" Yuan Fu hurried to greet him. Meng Yunqing shook his head and said, "We are fine. We just feel a little sad." The battle between the righteous and demonic factions, the struggle between Eastern Qi and Northern Yan, clearly has nothing to do with our West Chu, but every time it involves our West Chu soldiers and generals. Chu Xiu has a saying that has spread far and wide in the pugilistic world. In the pugilistic world, being weak is a sin in itself. This saying is also suitable for our West Chu. Being weak is a great sin. We do not ask for our West Chu to unify the world. We only ask for our West Chu to one day be recognized by everyone and not be reduced to a foil in every war. We don't even have the right to choose whether to fight or not. Seeing Meng Yunqing's emotional expression, Yuan Fu also sighed. He was an old man in the West Chu court. In his early years, he was a bandit in the pugilistic world. When he was seriously injured, he was rescued by the previous emperor. Since then, he had been loyal to the Meng family. He had watched Meng Yunqing grow up. He knew that the emperor's ability and wisdom were definitely not bad. He even felt that the emperor was not inferior to the current world's hero, Xiang Long. The only difference was that Xiang Long had the leeway to display his abilities, while Meng Yunqing did not even have the leeway to display his abilities. But this was also the sorrow of a small country. They had no choice but to go with the flow. It was just like what Chu Xiao had said. Being weak was a sin to begin with. Being able to survive was already something that one should thank the heavens and earth for. At this time, Chu Xiao did not know that Meng Yunqing was so emotional because of his words in the past. He did not have time to waste. He and Xiang Chong rushed back to northern Yan as fast as possible. But before they reached northern Yan, they saw the northern Yan military waiting for them at the border. They told them that eastern Qi had begun to attack. And this attack was from all directions. The border between eastern Qi and northern Yan, the Guanzhong torture room, and the Wei County were attacked at the same time. Among them, the Guanzhong torture room was about to collapse. Chapter 999. The Guanzhong torture room was located in the middle of the Three Kingdoms. In every war between the Three Kingdoms, the Guanzhong torture room had always been the unluckiest. But this time, the Guanzhong torture room had truly suffered an undeserved calamity. If not for Chu Xiao, Eastern Qi would not have attacked from the direction of the Guanzhong torture room. The two kingdoms had many other borders, including Wei County. But now, everyone knew that the nominal head of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Yuanxing, was actually a puppet. The real ruler of the Guanzhong torture room was still Chu Xiao. So naturally, the Guanzhong torture room became one of the three major Eastern Qi attack sites. In less than 3 days, the Guanzhong torture room had fallen more than half, pushed to the gates of Guanzhong. At this time, tens of thousands of soldiers had surrounded the Guanzhong torture room. The east side of the city had the most soldiers, and in the center was a huge chariot. At this time, there was a middle-aged man in armor lying lazily on the chariot. He was holding a glass of wine and had a mustache. He didn't look like he was here to fight. Instead, he looked like he was here to watch a show. But this man was no ordinary person. He was General Nangong Weiyu of the Eastern Qi Imperial Guard. Among the 9 armies of the Eastern Qi, the Imperial Guard could be ranked in the top 3. The military system of the Eastern Qi was similar to that of the Northern Yan. The only difference was that the Northern Yan only had the 5 armies of the state, while the Eastern Qi had the 9 armies of the Northern Yan. Of course, because of the vastness of Eastern Qi's territory, the 9 armies were only stationed at the 9 important borders of Eastern Qi. Apart from wars of annihilation, it was not easy to gather all of them. Nangong Weiyu and Beigong Bailey were old rivals. Even their names were in direct opposition to each other, as if they were born to be rivals. Last time, when Eastern Qi attacked Yan and Chu, Nangong Weiyu had suffered some losses against Beigong Bailey. This time, he wanted to save some face, but he didn't expect the higher-ups to send him to attack the Guanzhong torture room. This made Nangong Weiyu a little unhappy. It was too easy. At this moment, there were 2 people standing beside Nangong. One of them was the Chunyang Dao Sect's Mako Mori, and the other was the White Tiger Hall's master, Helian Chongfeng. 3 true fire spirit refinement realm experts and the entire Imperial Guard were enough to take down a Guanzhong torture room. Mako Mori frowned. General Nangong, can we give the order to attack the city? You set up the formation, but you're drinking here. What is the meaning of this? Nangong Weiyu glanced at Mako Mori without saying a word. This made Mako Mori even angrier. General Nangong, what is the meaning of this? Nangong Weiyu put down his wine glass and snorted. Do you have a problem with me, Taoist? Of course I do. The Chunyang Dao sect sent me here to assist you, General, but you're stalling for time here. A thunderous strike can kill these demonic cultivators when they're caught off guard. If this drags on, what if something unexpected happens? Nangong Weiyu clapped his hands. Taoist, you're right. All right, you'll be the general. You'll be in command. You do it. As he said this, Nangong Weiyu actually stood up and was about to leave. Helian Chongfeng, who was watching the show at the side, hurriedly pulled him back. Brother Nangong, Taoist Mako Mori doesn't mean that. Don't be angry. We people of the pugilistic world don't understand military formations. You can explain it to Taoist, and he'll understand, right? Mako Mori was also trembling with anger. He had never seen such a reckless person before. He was simply impervious to everything. However, for the sake of the Chunyang Dao sex plan, he forcefully held it in and didn't say a word. Nangong Weiyu snorted coldly. Don't give orders blindly if you don't understand. I hate amateurs guiding experts the most. I'm not as good as you Taoists at chanting scriptures and drawing talismans. But am I not good at military formations? Do you know how many people have gathered in the entire Guangzhou city? Nearly 100,000 warriors of the Guangzhou torture room are among them. Previously, we didn't encounter any decent resistance in other places. That's because the Guangzhou torture room has already transferred the elites of the Guangdong, Guangnan, Guanxi, and Guanbei regions to the Guangzhou city. That's nearly 100,000 warriors. They're all constables and constables who have seen blood on their hands. Although they aren't part of the military formations, they aren't weak either. I have the confidence to win, but what about after that? That's nearly 100,000 warriors, not 100,000 pigs. If they just charge in like this, how many losses will the Imperial Guard suffer? These people are my comrades. Even if you don't feel sorry for them, I will. Helian Chongfeng smiled. I see. But Brother Nangong, why are you dragging it out like this? Do you have a plan? Nangong Weiyu squinted his eyes. Have you heard of eagle endurance? You haven't experienced the pressure of a great army. No matter how strong a person is, they won't be able to withstand that kind of pressure. If I attack directly, the other party might rely on their bravery and fight to the death, causing great losses to the Imperial Guard. But when I've exhausted their bravery and only fear is left, then it'll be much easier. An unsheathed blade isn't scary. A blade hidden in a sheath is the scariest. Hearing Nangong Weiyu's explanation, Helian Chongfeng and Mako Mori finally understood what he meant. In fact, these warriors from the Jianghu really didn't think as much as Nangong Weiyu, who came from the military. In a battle to the death between sects, even if it's two large sects with more than 10,000 people, they would often swarm in together. It was a battle of overall strength, so there weren't many twists and turns. At this time, Mako Mori suddenly thought of something. He suddenly said, "Oh right, in the Guangzhou torture room, anyone can die, but it's best to leave Chu Yuanxing alive." He was bewitched by Chu Xiu because he had no choice. The Guangzhou torture room is not wrong. The one who is wrong is that devil, Chu Xiu. It had to be said that the reputation of the great hero Chu Kuanga was still very useful in the Jianghu. Even an old man like Mako Mori admired Chu Kuanga's deeds. Although there were many people in the Jianghu who were stronger than him, no one had the face to question Chu Kuanga's title. Chu Yuanxing was Chu Kuanga's only son. Even if he was standing on Chu Xiu's side and was their enemy, Mako Mori still wanted to keep him alive. Nangong Weiyu muttered and said impatiently, "Okay, got it." Mako Mori didn't hear what Nangong Weiyu muttered, but Helian Chongfeng on the side heard it. What Nangong Weiyu said was clearly to be a whore and to build a chastity. At this time, in Guangzhou City, everyone was indeed in a panic as Nangong Weiyu expected. Chu Yuanxing sat on the main seat. He barely kept calm and said, "Haven't they attacked the city yet?" Guangdong Penal Officer Xiao Yi shook his head and said, "No, it seems that they are deliberately trying to exhaust us until we don't even have the last bit of courage to fight, then they will attack." When Chu Xiu was in the Guangzhou torture room, Xiao Yi was the strongest of the 4 penal officers. At this time, he had already stepped into the real pellet state. However, compared with the Imperial Guard outside, a real pellet state was nothing. Chu Yuanxing turned his head to another person and said, "Senior Chu, will there be reinforcements coming later?" It was Chu Wuji who was sitting next to Chu Yuanxing. Because Chu Wuji was also in the real fire spiritual refinement state, he had the strength to guard one side. When he heard that the Guangzhou torture room was surrounded, he also took the initiative to come. Wei Shuya went to Wei Jun to help. However, he was a martial artist who had just advanced to the real fire spiritual refinement state. But he had to face 3 existences who had already stepped into the real fire spiritual refinement state. Even if Chu Wuji never thought that he was weaker than anyone, He was not confident at this time. Chu Wuji shook his head and said, I don't know. The news has already been sent out. Let's see who Yanjing City will send. Don't be afraid. Even if the Northern Yan Imperial Court doesn't send someone, Zhenwu Hall will send someone. Although Chu Wuji said so, in fact, he was not confident in his heart. The news had already been sent out, but there was no communication array between the Guanzhong torture room and the Northern Yan Imperial Court. They could only rely on manpower to send messages. So when the Northern Yan Imperial Court got the news and sent people over, he was not sure if they would make it in time. Chu Yuanxing nodded and said, well, even if we have to hold on, we have to hold on until the reinforcements come. The foundation of the Guanzhong torture room can't be destroyed like this. Everyone said that Chu Yuanxing was a tiger father and a dog son. Compared with Chu Kuanga, he really couldn't find anything special about him. It could even be said that he was extremely mediocre. But no matter how mediocre Chu Yuanxing was, he was not a good-for-nothing, nor was he a villain. This time, when Eastern Qi attacked the Guanzhong torture room, many people in the Guanzhong torture room were already complaining that it was because of Chu Xiu that the Guanzhong torture room was caught in the flames of war. In response to this kind of voice, Chu Yuanxing was the first to suppress it. Although Chu Xiu was the actual ruler of the Guanzhong torture room, he helped him to the position of hallmaster and did not take away any of the authority that he should have. The Guanzhong torture room was even stronger than before. Chu Xiu did not betray him, so naturally, he would not betray Chu Xiu. Chu Yuanxing could not do something like surrender for survival. And most importantly, the Guanzhong torture room was left behind by his father, Chu Kuanga. This might be the only obsession that Chu Yuanxing had in this life. His strength was weak and his ability was limited. He could not protect and strengthen the Guanzhong torture room, but others could. Therefore, he did not object to the fact that Chu Xiu was actually in control of the Guanzhong torture room. As long as the Guanzhong torture room was still there, and as long as the Guanzhong torture room was getting better, that was enough. But now, someone wanted to destroy the Guanzhong torture room. No matter how weak Chu Yuanxing was, he was ready to fight to the death with his enemies. His father was a great hero, and he died for the sake of justice. He, Chu Yuanxing, was not worth mentioning, but he was willing to fight to the death for the Guanzhong torture room. At this moment, there was a sudden battle cry from outside. Chu Wuji stood up and said in a low voice, Eastern Qi, they're attacking the city. Hallmaster Chu, you stay here and leave the rest to me. Chu Yuanxing shook his head and said, I want to go out with you. Chapter 1000. Guanzhong had been through the fires of war and was located on all sides. Even if it was a city, it could easily be flattened if a war broke out. Therefore, after the Guanzhong torture room was built, they even spent a lot of money to build such a majestic steel city. It was indeed not easy to break through. Seeing that his soldiers could only climb up using ladders, Nangong Weiyu took out a crimson halberd with a scorching aura. Holding the halberd, Nangong Weiyu headed straight for the city gates. He pointed the halberd at the sky. In an instant, the wind and clouds howled in the air, burning red like fire. With a loud bang, the halberd fell, and a powerful wave of heat rushed straight for the city gates. Even the steel city could not withstand the killing blow of a true fire cultivator in the spirit ascension realm. But at this moment, a strange weapon that looked like a saber but not a saber and shaped like a crescent moon slashed down with a dazzling blood-red moonlight. Its earth energy seemed to cut through the heavens and earth. With a loud bang, it blocked Nangong Weiyu's halberd. Chu Wuji stood on top of the city gates and sneered, It's General Nangong's turn so soon. Don't you think it's too degrading? Nangong Weiyu said lightly, Chu Wuji, it's you. No matter what, you used to be part of the royal family of the Wei Kingdom. You should be on the side of Eastern Qi. Why are you on the side of the Northern Yan? Chu Wuji said coldly, Back then, my Wei Kingdom was on the side of Eastern Qi. So what? A country that deserves to be destroyed will still be destroyed. Moreover, Xianglong is dead, and so are those who participated in the war to destroy my Wei Kingdom. I'm not on the side of the Northern Yan now, I'm on the side of the diabolism. Although the Wei Kingdom was destroyed by the Northern Yan, in fact, Chu Wuji did not have a good impression of Eastern Qi. The Wei Kingdom was a small country and could only survive in the cracks. However, back then, Wei Kingdom chose to side with Eastern Qi, But what happened in the end? The Wei Kingdom was destroyed, but Eastern Qi did not send reinforcements. Instead, they retreated. Later on, Lu Haochong became even more terrified. He didn't want to fight anymore, so he let this matter go. The only sacrifice was Wei Kingdom. Under such circumstances, it would be strange if Chu Wuji had a good impression of Eastern Qi. General Nangong, why are you wasting your breath on this evil scoundrel? Just attack him. Mako Mori had already walked out of the formation and stood beside Nangong Weiyu, as did Helian Chongfeng. The three of them stood together and formed a joint attack. At this moment, Chu Wuji's heart sank. Eastern Qi teamed up with the righteous martial arts world. This was indeed a force to be reckoned with. Even in a place like the Guanzhong torture room, they had already thrown 3 true fire spirit ascension realm cultivators. One could imagine how much pressure the other places were under. Facing this kind of attack, Chu Wuji snorted coldly, but he didn't retreat. The divine weapon in his hand danced in the air, and blood-colored moonlight sprinkled out. He actually fought 1 against 3, and directly slashed towards the 3 of them. Nangong Weiyu sneered. Miao Yue Dharma Supreme, Chu Wuji had quite a reputation in the diabolism. It should be said that before Chu Xiao appeared, Chu Wuji was the strongest among the new generation of the diabolism. However, who here was mediocre? The general of Eastern Qi, the chief hall leader of White Tiger Hall, and the perfected masters of the previous generation of Chunyang Dao sect, none of them were mediocre. Helian Chongfeng slashed down with a saber in his hand. The White Tiger deity shield, which was filled with murderous intent, tore through the void. Mako Mori formed a Taoist seal with his hand. Pure Yang Qi destroyed all evil and demons, and its power was boundless. Finally, Nangong Weiyu's halberd swept down as if it was splitting a mountain. The 3 of them joined forces, and Chu Wuji was sent flying. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. In less than 3 moves, Chu Wuji was already heavily injured. Even the divine weapon in his hand, the divine weapon, let out a mournful wail. Nangong Weiyu shook his head. Fight till the end? Your courage is commendable, but it's still useless. As Nangong Weiyu's voice fell, the flames on the halberd in his hand floated, and the scorching stellar energy dyed half the sky red. The halberd smashed down, and the fire dragon roared out. Just as Chu Wuji was about to burn his blood essence and fight again, and if he really could not do it, he would retreat with Chu Yuanqing and the others. A whistling sound suddenly rang out. Wherever the pitch-black arrow passed, even the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was extinguished. With a loud explosion, the arrow landed on the majestic fire dragon. In an instant, the scarlet flames on the fire dragon began to extinguish, and were replaced by the black flames of apocalyptic destruction. The flames of apocalyptic destruction even extended along the fire dragon to Nangong Weiyu's halberd. His expression suddenly changed, and the raging stellar energy around him suddenly erupted, completely expelling the power. Triple City Destroying Arrow. Chu Wuji immediately sighed in relief, but Nangong Weiyu and the others' expressions changed, and their hearts tightened. Chu Xiao, why was he here? He had come from Yanjing City, and he was so fast? In the air, Chu Xiao's body flashed with monstrous demon energy. He descended step by step, and looked at Nangong Weiyu. He said coldly, Are you worthy of using halberd? Everyone in Guanzhong City heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Chu Xiao. While there had been people silently criticizing Chu Xiao for bringing all of Guanzhong into the flames of war and so on. But now that Chu Xiao had appeared, they knew that the entire Guanzhong torture room only had one pillar, and that was Chu Xiao. Nangong Weiyu was about to say something with a dark face, when Chu Xiao pointed at him and said, Retreat! What a joke! Nangong Weiyu sneered and said, Chu Xiao, do you really think you're invincible? My Imperial Guard has tens of thousands of elites. Do you think you can handle them all by yourself? Chu Xiao turned to Chu Wuji and said, Lead all the members of Guanzhong torture room out of the city and fight to the death. I'll handle these 3. Chu Wuji nodded and immediately ran back into the city. This time, Chu Xiao came to Guanzhong torture room alone, while Xiang Chong directly returned to Yanjing City. He alone was enough to save the Guanzhong torture room. Xiang Chong still had to manage the 9 dragon seal and could not leave Yanjing City for too long. On the other side, When Nangong Weiyu and the other two saw Chu Xiu's attitude of ignoring them, their faces darkened at the same time. Although the three of them admitted that Chu Xiu was indeed powerful, and even in the primitive Devil's Cave, he could even force Su Ci from the Great Light Temple to retreat with one all-out attack. However, the three of them weren't nobodies. Chu Xiu, did you really think that you could defeat them? But before the three of them could make a move, Chu Xiu had already made the first move. The evil moon saber was already in his hand, and the power of the heart demon began to suppress the weapon spirit of the evil moon saber. There was only 15 minutes, but to deal with the three of them, not to mention 15 minutes, half an hour was enough. The long saber slashed down, and a blood-colored crescent moon appeared in midair. This blood-colored crescent moon was very similar to the scene when Chu Wuji used the divine weapon, Wonderful Moon. However, in Chu Xiu's saber, there was endless evil power. Even the space was distorted, and the surrounding power was swallowed. The saber headed straight for Nangong Weiyu. Feeling the power in the saber, Nangong Weiyu's expression changed. The halberd in his hand danced wildly, and the roar of a flaming dragon surrounded him like a shield of fire. The corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled up into a mocking smile. The ancient halberd is a ferocious weapon used in battle. What's more important is its aura. The halberd can only be used to attack, not to defend. Halberd is really a disgrace in your hands. As the general of Eastern Qi, Nangong Weiyu's Imperial Guard strength was enough to rank in the top 3 of the 9 border armies. But his use of halberd was really not as good as that of Lu Fengxian. Although Lu Fengxian had not yet reached the true fire spirit refining realm, when Lu Fengxian reached the true fire spirit refining realm, she would be able to beat her opponent. The evil moon saber slashed down, and the evil power continued to devour the power of the flaming dragon, strengthening itself. The saber and the halberd collided, and the dazzling blood-colored blade directly tore the flaming dragon apart. Nangong Weiyu suddenly felt an extremely strong force attack him, and his whole body was blasted away. As a martial artist with a military background, and using a fierce weapon like the halberd, Nangong Weiyu had naturally cultivated a body-tempering technique. However, no matter how strong Nangong Weiyu's body was, he was not as strong as Chu Xiu, who had already cultivated the true fire spirit refining realm. At this time, Mako Mori and Helian Chongfeng's attacks had already reached Chu Xiu. The Dao sword in Mako Mori's hand blossomed with pure sunlight, and it was as dazzling as the sun. He had cultivated the pure yang astral qi for his entire life, and his power was already extremely pure. Under the pure yang astral qi, no other power could be tolerated. The saber in Helian Chongfeng's hand was like it could split the mountains and split the seas. The extreme sharpness even tore apart the heaven and earth essence energy. The Western White Tiger's Eugene sharpness was unleashed to the extreme. As the saber shadow descended, there was even a white tiger's blood shadow lingering within the white tiger baleful god shield. In that instant, Chu Xiu's hands formed a seal. Majestic demonic qi and scorching Buddhist light were released simultaneously, and an evil Dharma idol appeared behind him. On one side was the Vairocana seal. The Dharma idol was solemn and dignified, and the Buddhist light was resplendent. On the other side was the demonic god Mahakala. He was ferocious and furious, and his demonic flames surged to the skies. This Dharma idol had 2 faces and 4 arms. The Vairocana seal formed by the colorless sealing palm was like a mustard seed, and the heavens and earth were all enveloped within it. In an instant, it had already shattered Helian Chongfeng's white tiger baleful god shield, and shattered the white tiger Dharma idol with a single slap. The demonic god of the great Mahakala put his palms together, and from the 3 eyes on the top of his head, endless apocalyptic flames came roaring down. Its might was earth-shattering, and it directly enveloped Mako Mori in his apocalyptic flames, devouring the pure yang energy around him. He was forced to use all his strength to use the Dao sword in his hand to slash apart the apocalyptic flames, and only then was he able to escape. In just 2 moves, all 3 of them were forced to retreat. In an instant, Chu Xiu's might was immeasurable. And at this time, the gates of Guangzhong City also opened. Under the lead of Chu Wuji, Xiao Yi, and the others, a group of Guangzhong torture room martial artists immediately rushed towards the Imperial Guard outside. In an instant, the sounds of killing filled the heavens and earth, and killing intent surged to the heavens. Chapter 1001. The number of martial artists in the Guanzhong torture room wasn't considered small, but as compared to the Imperial Guard, they were lacking in coordination. In one-on-one battles, or when a small number of people fought, the Guanzhong torture room's martial artists would definitely have the upper hand. Although the Guanzhong torture room's martial artists had the upper hand in terms of numbers and injuries, they were still at a disadvantage when it came to actual combat. However, in this battlefield, other than the Guanzhong torture room's martial artists being at a disadvantage at the beginning, the Guanzhong torture room was suppressing their opponents. The reason was simple. Nangong Weiyu was also being suppressed by Chu Xiao. As a general, Nangong Weiyu was almost equivalent to the soul of the Imperial Guard. In the end, Nangong Weiyu was defeated at the front line, and this was a huge blow to the morale of the entire Imperial Guard. Nangong Weiyu also saw the scene below. He turned to Helian Chongfeng and Mako Mori and shouted, "Let's attack together. Don't let Chu Xiao get the chance." Based on Chu Xiao's current strength, they might not be a match for Chu Xiao one-on-one, but they didn't believe that they couldn't defeat Chu Xiao if the three of them attacked together. Fire patterns appeared around Nangong Weiyu's body, and a majestic aura poured into the halberd in his hand. The long halberd slashed down, and the roar of the fire dragon resounded throughout the sky. Mako Mori bit his thumb and drew a pure Yang Dao pattern in the void with his burning blood. When his sword slashed on the pure Yang Dao pattern, countless pure Yang runes flourished and shrouded towards Chu Xiao. Helian Chongfeng didn't make a move, but the surging killing intent around him had already evolved into a materialized white tiger fiend divine constellation, which condensed on the battle saber in his hand. A piercingly cold and sharp intent surged up, but it was not released. He was waiting for the most suitable moment for him to strike. In the face of the three's all-out attacks, Chu Xiao formed a seal with his hands. In an instant, a turbulent demonic aura rose from his feet, and even his eyes were completely dyed black. Murmurs that seemed to come from the sticks of hell resounded throughout the world. As Chu Xiao displayed his hand seals, the sky wept and blood rained down. The pure Yang runes that wrapped around Chu Xiao burst and melted under the dense rain of blood, and couldn't even last for a breath of time. Moreover, within the blood rain, the boundless blood color actually condensed into a huge fiend celestial phantom that was 10,000 feet tall. With a grab, it directly crushed the fire dragon that Nangong Weiyu had conjured with his power as if it were an earthworm. In that instant, the sky wept and blood rain stopped. Mako Mori and Nangong Weiyu both spat out a mouthful of blood. After Chu Xiao's Heaven and Earth Demon Weeping Mantra gained new insights in Primitive Demon Cave, its power could be said to have risen to a whole new level. Although it couldn't replicate the power of Primitive Demon Cave, it wasn't much weaker. But at this moment, the moment that the sky wept and blood rain disappeared, a cool breeze suddenly blew past. In the next moment, Helian Chongfeng's saber-wielding figure had already appeared in front of Chu Xiao. No one saw how he had attacked, not even Chu Xiao. Clouds follow dragons. Wind follows tigers. Helian Chongfeng's saber was filled with killing intent, but it borrowed the power of the wind to pass through layers of space. By the time the saber fell, it had already touched Chu Xiao's protective astral energy. The killing intent frantically tore through the astral energy, and the saber intent was even about to corrode Chu Xiao's body. This was Helian Chongfeng's essence, qi, and spirit had reached its peak. Taking advantage of the fact that Nangong Weiyu and Mako Mori had already offset Chu Xiao's killer move, he slashed out at the critical point where Chu Xiao's strength was connected. He was confident that no one in the same realm could dodge his saber. But at this moment, Chu Xiao's evil moon saber seemed to have a mind of its own. It suddenly appeared in front of the two, and the twisted blood-colored moonlight swallowed everything in an instant. The heart demon shouted in Chu Xiao's mind, "Only 3 breaths of time left. I've forcefully used the evil moon saber to protect its master, and I've used up too much energy. I can no longer suppress the weapon's spirit. 3 breaths of time is enough." The moment Chu Xiao clenched the evil moon saber, the saber intent of the break formula slashed out. Although this slash was hurriedly executed and not Chu Xiao's full strength, the invincible saber intent of the break formula directly destroyed all of Helian Chongfeng's attacks. The white tiger baleful god shield was torn apart. Helian Chongfeng watched as the saber in his hand was shattered like tofu by the demonic long saber in Chu Xiao's hand. That was the white tiger hall's divine weapon that had been passed down for generations, the death god. Of course, at this moment, Helian Chongfeng couldn't care less about the saber in his hand. The moment the saber intent of the break formula appeared, The invincible energy charged straight at Helian Chongfeng. Just shattering a saber wasn't the limit of the break formula's saber intent. This slash could cut the heavens, shatter the earth, and destroy all things in the world. There was nothing it couldn't break. Explosions of energy rang out. The seemingly solid white tiger baleful god shield was as fragile as tofu in front of this slash. Helian Chongfeng's figure retreated quickly, but cracks had already appeared on his battle armor. The saber intent was about to enter his body. With a roar, the blood energy around Helian Chongfeng ignited. A hazy bloody mist condensed into a white tiger dharma idol behind Helian Chongfeng. As it roared angrily at the sky, it received the power of the white tiger star god. Even though the sky was clear and boundless, Helian Chongfeng still forcibly guided a streak of starlight down and attached it to the white tiger behind him. As the white tiger roared, a force that contained the power of the stars and boundless blood chi gushed out from its mouth. However, it was still torn apart by the saber intent of the break formula. However, it finally offset the power of Chu Xiu's slash. Helian Chongfeng's eyes flickered with fear. He no longer had any intention of fighting Chu Xiu. With a pale face, he turned around and fled. At that moment, he really felt that death was about to befall him. Perhaps if he had used just a little more strength, he would have been completely cut into pieces by Chu Xiu's slash. At this time, Chu Xiu did not stop. He gathered devil chi in his hand and shot out 3 Annihilation City arrows. Moreover, it was not just one arrow, but 3 consecutive arrows. The 3 arrows went straight for Mako Mori. When they arrived in front of him, they exploded. The power of Nirvana eroded Mako Mori's pure yang aura chi. The endless annihilation fire had completely enveloped the old Taoist. After the 3 arrows, Chu Xiu did not even look at them. He went straight for Nangong Weiyu. The power of the heart demon could no longer suppress the evil moon saber. Chu Xiu simply did not use the evil moon saber. Instead, he punched at Nangong Weiyu. With Chu Xiu's current physical strength, it was enough to take on a divine weapon. Nangong Weiyu was forced to retreat step by Chu Xiu. He roared angrily, and a layer of purple flames ignited in his eyes. On the halberd, the purple flames erupted. A tiny spark contained a powerful explosive force. However, in the next moment, Chu Xiu's body was filled with Buddhist light. The Mahavirokana Dhamma idol appeared behind him. The colorless ceiling palm imprint fell again, distorting the space between heaven and earth. In an instant, the power of Chu Xiu's attack was completely dissipated. Nangong Weiyu was about to go crazy. It was this move again. Only God knew that he, Chu Xiu, was a ferocious and powerful devil. Why would he know such a fierce and imposing Buddhist martial art? However, what Nangong Weiyu did not expect was that Chu Xiu's colorless ceiling palm imprint was even stronger than the one he had used against Helian Chongfeng. At that time, Chu Xiu had attacked both Helian Chongfeng and Mako Mori at the same time. But now, he was only attacking Nangong Weiyu. Under the twisting strangulation of the endless Buddhist light, the divine weapon halberd in Nangong Weiyu's hand actually shattered. Before Nangong Weiyu had time to feel distressed, Chu Xiu took a step forward and was already in front of him. His fist, which was shining with the flames of destruction, blasted down. It was mixed with the fist intent of the mountain and sea fist scripture. It could shatter mountains and split seas. On Nangong Weiyu's arm, the Crimson Gang Chi turned into a roaring fire dragon and met Chu Xiu's fist. But in the next moment, the fire dragon had already been swallowed by the flames of destruction. The armor on his body could not even withstand the power of Chu Xiu's fist and was shattered. His whole body was also blasted away, vomiting blood. At this moment, the soldiers of the Imperial Guard below saw that their general was actually vomiting blood by Chu Xiu. This was definitely a huge blow to their morale. And there were even deserters. If it were not for the strict military discipline of the Imperial Guard, they would have already begun to collapse. Cover the middle army, retreat. Nangong Weiyu covered his chest and shouted angrily. Helian Chongfeng had already escaped, and Mako Mori's fate was unknown. He no longer had the intention to continue fighting. Chu Xiu did not chase after Nangong Weiyu, but turned to look at Mako Mori, who was surrounded by the flames of destruction. In the next moment, a scorching pure yang light rushed out from the flames of destruction, turned into a sword light, and fled. It was Mako Mori's figure, but no one knew how much he had paid for it. The three of them fled in 3 different directions. Chu Xiao did not chase after them, and he also breathed a sigh of relief. Using the Devil's Whale Great Compassion mantra and the sword intent of the breaking word formula consecutively, and fighting 1 against 3 in a short period of time, took a lot out of Chu Xiao. It was meaningless to forcibly chase after them. At most, he could only leave one of them alive, and there was still a mess at the Guanzhong torture room to deal with. At this time, the Guanzhong torture room had won completely. With Chu Xiao fighting the 3 true fire spirit refinement realm existences. Although Chu Wuji was injured, he still had combat strength. In addition, the Guanzhong torture room had a large number of people. Even if it was a chaotic battle without any formation, the effect was not bad. Chu Wuji walked over with a slightly pale face. He looked at Chu Xiao with a look of surprise. Previously in the primitive devil cave, Chu Xiao had forced Su Ci to retreat with his saber. But at that time, there was too little time, and he could not observe Chu Xiao's true strength. Now, Chu Xiao was fighting 1 against 3, and all 3 of them were seriously injured. This was a little terrifying. If these 3 people were at the level of the Sun family ancestor or the Lu family ancestor, it would not be a big deal. But these 3 people were not easy to deal with. Their combat strength stood at the peak of the same realm, but they were still crushed by Chu Xiao. This was a little terrifying. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.